We'll go ahead and call the order. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Troopman,
Here.
Vice Mayor Tudor,
Here.
Commissioner Butte,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson Sadea,
Here.
Commissioner Ross.
Here.
We all stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Manager, clerk, and commissioners, are there any deletions, or withdrawals to the agenda? None? I just want to let you know, Senator Daphne Campbell reached out this evening. She had a conflict, and she asked me to extend her regrets. She hopes to be able to come to our next meeting. So the presentation by Daphne Campbell will not take place this evening. Open to public comments.
We don't have to sign anything over here?
No,
Okay.
just speak close.
Oh, good, you know by heart. Okay, good. Dan Samaria, 1030 Northeast 121st Street. Two things I want to bring up. One, I want to get the approval from the commissioner for my annual 9/11 collection to be put up at the rec center from September 1st to the 30th. And then also for my memorial that I have, which will be on, let's see, it'll be on a Sunday this time. It'll be Sunday, September 9th from 2 to 4, which I'm going to be renting, the rec center. And I just wanted to get the approval for the commission to hold those two events. Okay. And then the second is we are now coming up to the upcoming hurricane season. We have not had a comprehensive workshop to inform the residents of what has been done since the last hurricane. If you have, I apologize, and you probably did, right? And I wasn't there. And what to do to prepare for the upcoming one. I just hope that we would have another workshop that can prepare people for that.
Thank you. We'll address it at the end then. Thank you.
Bob Anderson, 11th Place, 119th Street. On agenda item 9A, that's the ordinance for refinancing our loan. The original loan had a prepayment penalty for 5 years. Did they waive that? Also, too, on 10C, that's the waiving permit fees for solar systems. I'd like to get a number of what it actually cost us if we did waive that fee 100%, what it cost us for the inspectors, because that's a fixed price. Now, personally, I think it's a good thing to do, go ahead and help homeowners to go ahead and be a little bit more conscientious, save the planet. But I think with the way our finances are, I think 100% being absorbed by our budget, I think it's a little bit strong for this city right now. Maybe you could look at maybe 50%. Split it down the middle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Louis R. Roger, 655 Northeast 118th Street. I have been appointed to the Public Safety Advisory Board and selected by the board as chairman. And I'm here, as I understand, we're going to discuss input for the board and what you would like us to look into going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Good evening. David Raymond, 11520 Northeast 9th Avenue. I promise, Christian, I'm not here to talk about my drains tonight, but I'll come back. But I am here to talk about a dog park. And I'm not asking for anybody to get nervous about putting a dog park next to their house or anything. I'm not asking for anybody to do anything as yet to cite any dog park or anything, but just to give you very briefly, And one of them was a report from the dog park committee, which said that a site had been approved, and this was in 2005. So I put something on Nextdoor and asked about the dog park committee and got a bunch of responses. And long story short, I was directed to John Ice, who used to be a resident here, now lives in the Shores. Turns out he's also a colleague of mine from my old days of working, who gave me this wonderful folder of all of the work of the dog park committee in the past. So what I'm asking at this point is, would the commission consider either appointing another dog park committee, appointing an ad hoc committee if that's allowed, appointing this to a committee, an existing committee that might explore this if it fits in there? I know I've heard that Mr. Key's committee might be interested. Heard that through the grapevine, Dan, so I don't know. Whatever might work, that if people want to explore this, it would be great. I know other people in the community have gotten back to me about that. I can tell you, since we've moved here, you know, people have been talking about dog parks. I know we have a park in Miami Shores. I know we have a park in a military trail park on 89th. I know we have Grenells. We've got a lot of parks on the beach, all of the other parks that are around. But having a park in the community does bring a sense of community to the neighborhood. That said, I know that anybody who might have this across the street from their house might or might not be interested in that at the same time. So my request is just that, you know, if the commission, I don't know if any of the commissioners are foolish or brave enough to sponsor an item like this, or how it might move forward, or if it's just kind of a direction, if it flows under an existing committee to look at. But that would be my request, if you would please just take a look at what had been done in the past and see where it might not go. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Good evening, Jared, 1030 Northeast 120th Street, Jared Susi. Dog park, let's go for it. A lot of work has already been put into it. We should at least look at continuing it. Here to talk about a couple of the agenda items. Agenda item 10B, Tennis Academy. Like it. Just want to know where are they going to train at the rec center? Are they going to take over the basketball court? Are they going to be working on the at the wall? Where's it going to go? Agenda item 10C. I'm with Bob. I'm all for saving the environment and everything, but being in the construction and roofing industry, priced out solar. I didn't put it on my house because it does not pay back within the lifespan of the solar panels. That's the real reason why the solar panels are not being installed right now. Waiving of the fees really won't do much for the long-term investment. My opinion is that it has to come from the state incentives to help push the solar panels along. And last but not least, 12C, the stone street level street signs. Jenny, thank you for bringing this up. I feel everyone's pain about the corners. I live interior, I'm not on a corner lot, but driving over the swale, it's one of my pet peeves. I make sure I don't do it, I respect others, and anything to curb that is all for it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Any further public comments?
I have a tendency, I have the same issues, at least with the portion of the permit fee that goes.
Turn the mic on, please. Thank you.
I have the same issues with 10C that the other two speakers had, especially with regard to the cost of paying the inspector, which used to be 50%. I'm not sure what it is today. But, I mean, the average citizen in the community shouldn't, at least shouldn't have to contribute to that portion of it. Anyway, with regard 12B and the Public Safety Advisory Board, you know, I don't know if you're going to set your goals for that board at this time. I just ask you, you know, since there's maybe things that are controversial that they would develop and recommend, I would just ask you that you don't tip your hand so much For instance, we must have traffic circles, something like that. You know, that maybe, you know, they're instructed to study them and advise on the impact in the community and the benefits to the community and the negatives to the community. But that you don't put it out to the community that this is going to happen regardless. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Y'all got an email from me, referenced the street markers, the corner street markers, concrete street markers. I am concerned about the liability about them, and just, you know, do some due diligence as to what the parameters on that and what other communities may have dealt with on that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Kristen Montori, 515 Northeast 115th Street. I am here to speak about the idea of a dog park. However, I would like to mention that I walked in the door at 6:59, and this meeting was already having public comments, as well as the fact that your minutes for this, your agenda for this meeting, online, the agenda is not updated since May. So I was not able to download the current agenda, and also I missed the pledge of allegiance, so there's that. Okay. Second is I live across the street from that park. I'm the one house facing that triangle park, and I have sent you all an email that I'd like to read now so that it's on the record. There are many reasons not to place a dog park in a proposed location. Your big park is the front yard of Biscayne Park for all traffic traveling through our beautiful neighborhood on the main thoroughfares of 6th Avenue or Ripping Boulevard. This is the village's flagship property, and a fenced dog park would detract from our image. Ripping Park is a memorial to Arthur M. Griffin, the founder and developer of Biscayne Park. In addition, the Boy Scout Troop 408 placed the flag flying at Ripping Park in honor and memory of citizens of our community who served their country in the U.S. Armed Forces. To use this space for a dog park is to disrespect those honored and the intent of those who placed the memorials there. Locating a dog park in Burke Park would be the loss of the only open park space in Biscayne Park. Losing this open space would hamper Biscayne Park's image as an open and inviting place to live. Most neighborhoods that install a dog park do so out of necessity. Biscayne Park has no high-rise buildings and certainly no lack of green space. One of the many reasons our residents are here is the abundance of walkable green areas which allow both dogs and owners to socialize and exercise. Property values along the border of the proposed location and north on Griffin would be negatively impacted and significantly reduce the village revenue in an area with many high-value homes. Part of the appeal and value of these properties is the open park space. The proposed parking area for the Biscayne Park dog park is located in the northgoing portion of Ripping Boulevard, bordering Ripping Park. There are 4 private homes on this street, on this stretch of Ripping Park, who would no longer have any egress to the north. And if parking areas were to be built there where there is currently grass, it would reduce much needed green space. I'm going to skip because my time is almost out. However, what I would say is that residents currently don't clean up dog food. And I cannot imagine that having a fenced-in area where they really think they don't have to worry about is going to make it any cleaner, neater, or do anything for the property values of this village to have a fenced-in area right there on 6th Avenue. I think that our best idea would be to promote that, as we've talked about in the past, as an art park, as a place to do a sculpture garden. We created an art board specifically to talk about this. So I think it would be reckless to abandon that idea, and I think we should consider a different location for the dog park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Margaret Foldis. I live at 902 Northeast 113th Street, and I also wanted to talk to you about the dog park. I was part of the discussion last time, which I'm sure some people remember. Anyway, I live like right on the corner of 113 and 9th Avenue, which is right across the street from the soccer area of the park. Last time round, it was suggested as a location, and I am definitely against that. I would be against it for anybody who does not want a dog park in front of their house to have a dog park in front of their house. It's true that people don't pick up after their poop. I have poop in my yard all the time that I have to pick up. It smells, the poop, the noise, and also just the bugs. You got fleas and different things. someone had last suggested that they could spray the grass really well so that it would, they could soak it and so that we wouldn't have fleas or whatever. But I also have a son and myself who have respiratory issues, so chemicals across the street from our house are not a good idea for us. So I kind of echo what the other person who was just here said. If it's the problem with the last time was the location. We couldn't really find a location because there's not a lot of space to fence off for a dog park. And nobody really wants it in front of their house. If someone who wants the dog park wants it in front of their house, I'm all for that, as long as it's not in front of my house. And I will work with anybody where it's being suggested that it be in front of their house, because I understand what that pressure is like, to have to worry about whether that's going to happen to you or not. So for the other woman who was here, I don't know if she's still here, yeah, I'd like to get your contact information before you leave. So that's really my whole story here, and that's it.
Thank you very much.
Barbara Kuehl, 111th Street. I'm not in favor of the dog park either. Really wasn't going to talk about this. I've been here a long time. It's come up many times. There are just so many spots in Biscayne Park, open land, and they're all next to houses. People have suggested putting it at the recreation field. I would hope that you're not even considering this. And I realize David just came up with a proposal that it's not something that has to start from the commission. The reason John Icy dropped that is because it was supposed to have financial support, and it's very limited. They realized there were a lot of issues with the property. There's a lot of issues, and sometimes you have to just move on. We have a dog park on 123rd Street right by the Vees Causeway, which is probably 2 miles away. I don't know why everybody thinks they're going to get to one place. When I had young kids, we didn't have a playground here. I used to get in my car and drive. So I would suggest doing the same thing. I emailed all of you information about the solar panel issue, and I'm not really in favor of giving waiving the fee. Right now, there are a lot of houses in the park that need extensive renovations. There are a lot of people who may not even have the money to do that. Solar panels, to me, it's a luxury. Let's face it, you're not doing this unless you have money to be able to spend and feel good about, saving the world. It doesn't do, the cost effectiveness isn't there. It's a nice idea. I think if the village wants to do something in terms of the environment, think about putting hybrid police cars. Think about doing things in the village that will help save not fertilizer, chemicals, things that are good for the environment. But I think it's, to me, the thing that really the thing that bothered me the most is that it seemed to be a sales promotion for Y-Green. And I've been against Y-Green since it started. And the articles support that it's got a lot of, Y-Green has a lot of issues. And I think it's the case in California that where Los Angeles is being sued along with Y-Green. It's because it's a predatory practice that they feel is taking advantage of elderly and uninformed people where they don't find out until it's too late that they may lose their house. They can't afford this. It's not passed on to the next owner without having to pay up front first. And there's also a payment penalty. And I don't know why we ever got involved in this. I feel if you read the articles and you do research, I think Biscayne Park should opt out of that whole program. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. If you could wait one moment till we switch out the mic. Thank you.
Chuck Ross, 11166 Repping Boulevard. Seated Barbara here. I'm getting a mic that works. A couple of things. Question, I hope the manager will address it in his report. have you considered looking outside the village for possible areas to remove debris in the event that we have a storm? Because there's, what I understand is the location now is going to end up being the rec center, which I would hate to have it there. And there are some large pieces of land not far away, so I hope that you've taken a serious look at that. I'm concerned about the status of the FEMA reimbursement. That's quite a big chunk of our money that's tied up. And our burn rate of, I think, $250,000 or $225 a month, you know, if we don't get reimbursed soon, we're going to have to look into possibly getting emergency sources of funding until we do get reimbursed, and until the tax dollars start rolling in the end of December, November rather, early December. I'm glad to see that on the agenda tonight is that directions are going to be given to the Public Safety Advisory Board, which I've been harping about at the Public Safety Advisory Board meetings. And thank the chairperson for showing up. Thank you. And related to that, this is directed at part of Bill, Commissioner Bill. You were working on a project, it sounds like, with the Florida Department of Transportation, but you didn't bring that, whatever ideas you were working on, to the commission. And I think that, you know, if we're working on particularly significant things that may take place in this village, and we came up with the meeting at the trim meeting, I think it was July 30th, was that there might be a project going forward putting sidewalks on 6th Avenue, which nobody had any idea about on the commission or in the public. That's a pretty significant event that might take place here that people would want to be concerned about. These are the things that you should bring. You shouldn't work on your own behind the scenes, but you should work with the entire commission or any commissioner. Sorry I'm singling you out, but that's what you were doing with that project. But any commissioner in general, if there's a project that they feel that they want to look into, it needs to be brought to the entire commission, in my opinion. And then the commission will vet it and decide if they want to devote resources of our staff to look into that. Now, in conjunction with that, the Public Safety Advisory Board didn't have any direction for 3 months because, and then you were going off, again, sorry to isolate you, Harvey.
It's okay.
You were going off in your own direction, using you as an example. Apologize. But the point is, we got to all work together on these things and make sure the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. Another minute? Yeah. I know that the idea of putting stone corner signs on swales sounds like a nice idea. I actually grew up in the Gables, and after a while, they deteriorate. They do get hit. I imagine that they're expensive. I don't really think it's a very good idea. I think maybe there are other ways to mitigate running over corners and swales. But if you go take a look around the Gables, you'll see that a lot of the signs are there. Some of them you can barely read. Dan can speak much better about this than I can because he was public service director of the Gables for many years. So you might want to rethink that one, possibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Good evening, Gary Kuehl, 777 Northeast 111th Street. My comments on the dog park are quite succinct. We have cats. I live on a corner, and periodically we've had damage. I had edging that has been wiped out by trucks and cars. So I was sympathetic to the damages done on a corner lot. But concerning 12C, it's just not really a practical idea. You can't place these monument signs at the edge of the pavement. They have to be back so people can still cut the corner. If you place them at the edge of pavement, they're going to get damaged. There'll be a hazard. It would be a problem. As far as visibility, they're very difficult to see. If you have a median, you're not going to be able to see them. You can't see them well at night. They don't serve a practical purpose. So what would you do? Leave the pole signs as well as the monument signs? The overriding concern would be the cost. These have to be big enough so that they can be anchored in the ground. They need to be reinforced. They need to be painted. They need to be maintained. I mean, let's just say you could get one for, and they're custom. Everyone's custom because the letters and the numbers are indented. That's your stencil for when they're repainted. So let's just say you get it for $300. Then somebody's got to go out and dig a hole. They've got to place it. They've got to restore the yard. And let's say that's $75. I'm probably lowballing this tremendously. There's approximately 88 intersections in Biscayne Park. 50 of them are cross intersections and 38 are T's. And I made the off. I did a quick count. Now, you're not going to put these just on one corner. It doesn't make any sense. You want to put them on all four corners. So now you're talking about 250 of these things. You know what that would cost? That's over $100,000. Even if it was $50,000 or $25,000, I'd rather see every penny of that go to improving our roads rather than something that really isn't practical, doesn't work, and is not going to prevent people from cutting the corner. The corners that have striping, and not many remain, tend to fare a little bit better. Maybe a coincidence, it may just because it's more visible. I don't have a solution to offer. I wish I did. But I think we need to explore other ideas. This just doesn't work, and it would be phenomenally expensive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments? Okay, we'll close public comments. Information updates. Manager, are there any information updates?
Would you like an update from our finance director, Paul?
Sure.
Paul, can you give us a quick update, please?
Thank you. Is it sounding? I can't tell from here. Okay. The commission may, I don't know, Christian, if you sent out the financials. This month's financials just got finished because of the early time of year, of month, and everything is tracking excellent. In fact, last month the revenue was a tad off. It was about $50,000 short on the ad valorem, and I had received a question about that from one or more commissioners. And as expected, it was a timing issue. In fact, you're almost $100,000 ahead of budget right now. So we got the last tax certificate sweep that we get. So timing's really good, and the news is good in that respect. So your revenue is tracking ahead as we reported in our budget, but it's proven out this month as well. The audit, the next audit was kicked off by the auditor this week. They're scheduling their activities. They had, I think when he was here, he thought he could do it in a few weeks, maybe 3 or 4 at the most. That's clearly going to meet the September 30th deadline that we've set ourselves. So we're in good shape there. We've been to the rodeo with them, so we kind of know what they need, and they know what we have, and so that's all good news that we're on track. The FRS audit, I know that's always something we've been dealing with, and it's a unique task. I'll tell you, of the 837 pages of documents that we have to cull through to identify, we're working on it. I just want to tell you a little bit what it's like. Of those 837 documents, each one of them you find this slight correction error to the sick time. That correction error then has to be entered into the state system. I realize now why it's taking so long. You can only enter into the state system the 4-day period between the end of a pay period and the grace period to make edits. Right. So there's 4 days a month that we have to time our staff to do these entrants into the system. So you can imagine over a 5-year audit period. So we're working on it a little bit differently. We figured that out, how to schedule ourselves. So we're knocking out, I think she's, I don't know, a quarter of the way through with the analysis. When that's finished in a couple weeks, we should be able to finish it definitely by year end, which was the goal I'd hoped for. Just some of these tasks, as you realize the restraints in these user interfaces in the state system, it's a good lesson to realize that it doesn't happen quickly. But we're adapting to it. The last thing, the budget draft that we talked about at our workshop, I made a few small changes to it as I've learned a little bit of details about how we want to clarify it. We should be ready for the workshops. Like I said, I do see on the agenda a date shift, so whatever you decide tonight, we'll figure out how to be there for you. Can't think of any other questions. On the agenda is the bank financing. We can talk about that at that time. Any other questions for me?
I have one question for you, if I may. There was one comment by one of the residents regarding the potential if we don't get reimbursed by FEMA, which I know I've seen a number of news articles, as well as we've gotten correspondence from the state. They are definitely not, it's not happening fast. So
Roof is
for
here.
everywhere, not here, just everywhere. And there's no city, cities are collectively upset about the rate at which we're being reimbursed. Could you expand a little bit on whether or not that will impact us, and if so, when?
Well, your cash flow is really the first topic when you talk about using up almost, just short of $1 million from last year's cash to cover the expenses. So what you're doing is you're heading into the financial dead period of government, which is October 1 through December, where there's no new ad valorem revenue, and your assessment revenue doesn't come in then either. So you have a lot of expenses where there's no matching revenue. So what happens with as I've gotten a little smarter about how you work now that I've been here a few months, you actually generate just about your core operating money every month throughout external fees, particularly the building department. And at that pace, in this environment, you're able to match yourselves through that dead period. So you won't need to borrow or shift. You're not really borrowing. You're shifting from your reserves, which is another conversation for later tonight, how to do that. But you're close to not having to worry about it between now and December, barring something unusual that I don't know about.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? None. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Any other information updates? Manager, any other information updates?
No.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the balance of the consent?
I have just one question on 10A, the subaward grant agreement.
Okay, so you want to pull that one from consent?
For a brief question.
Sure. Would you like to do that prior? Can we just take the brief question
Is 10A
now?
on consent, though?
It's not on the consent, I don't think. No, it's not under consent. It's just the minutes and the two sets of minutes, that's all.
Yeah, just a minute.
Okay, so
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to 9A, which is ordinance first reading. We first of all would like to welcome our new village attorney, John Heron Jr. And I know it sounds a lot like John Hearn, but it's not. I'm just saying that so that people get confused. Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I'm not sure, so I'm assuming that by introducing me, it's the practice of this commission that Mr. Hearn, the village attorney, would read the title of the ordinance in question. If that is in fact the case, then that being said, this is ordinance first reading 2018-04, an ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, to authorize the borrowing of money for the refinancing of an existing loan in amount not to exceed $297,000, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Yes, and on that note, I will turn it over to the manager.
Okay, this is a look at refinancing our existing loan. I have spoken with the bank, that's City National Bank. I've asked them if, in fact, the $220-something thousand that we have currently on deposit with them in the control account is something that we can pull out and use a portion of. According to the bank, that is frozen, so we cannot do that. Now, in our legal agreement with them, it appears that we can. So what we're looking at here is, how much money do we want to put towards, arguing with the bank on this one, on the existing loan. If we go ahead and go to FCB and refinance the loan, our interest rate will be 4.05%. We're currently paying 4.25% on the loan. That would save a couple $1,000s. There's no closing costs on this loan. There would be some attorney's fees. FCB said that for their side, it would be about $3,500 plus whatever we pay our new village attorney to take our side and review it from our side as well. His estimate was that it would be, certainly less than theirs, and so we're looking at probably, say, $6,500 or so to refinance this loan. That would free up the $220,000 that's currently frozen. I said, or we can fight the bank with that, we have no relationship with C&B anymore other than this loan. We've moved everything else over to FCB at this point. Additionally, we are on short timing with this. FCB has promised us or has guaranteed us the interest rate through tonight's commission meeting. I've asked them for another 30 days on this so we can go to a second reading if the commission approves it. And so if not, then we're fine staying where we are. The cost of refinancing is pretty minimal. I believe former Commissioner Anderson asked about the payoff loan. I believe that was a 3-year payoff, so we shouldn't have a penalty for paying off this loan. And so.
May I ask the attorney, based upon your expertise, could you care to make a comment? Because I know there's an issue of what they say. I know there was a lot of discussion, which you weren't here for, prior to this meeting regarding the legitimacy of holding on to those types of funds. So I'll turn this over to you if you don't mind.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The previous loan documents were provided to me for me to review. I do concur that it does not appear to me that your current lender does have the authority to withhold those $220,000 and change. However, as the manager indicated, it really is a question of where do you want to allocate your financial resources to me and your staff and potentially fighting and arguing with the bank or moving on into a new business relationship with a new bank that appears to be, as best I can characterize it, much more willing to do business with the village than your previous bank and the one that's still holding on to the loan that is being paid off prospectively with the adoption of this ordinance if you decide to move forward. I would also point out that as it's currently written, this is just first reading, and so obviously between first reading and second reading, the loan documents would be finalized, reviewed both by the new bank's outside counsel or in-house counsel, as the case may be, and your village attorney to make sure that it does in fact represent the things that are set forth in the loan commitment letter, and making sure that those funds, those discretionary funds, are in fact discretionary and available to you all as you move forward into the next fiscal year. So it's really a question, as the manager pointed out, where do you want to portion your resources to finalizing the new transaction, or arguing with the current lender, and to the extent that they continue to disagree, what that expenditure might be on my behalf is certainly unknown. Whereas we know that with some degree of certainty that the cost to review the new loan documents certainly should not exceed what the bank's counsel is going to be spending and what they've estimated. So it's a question, where do you want to put your money?
Thank you very much. Open for discussion. Commissioner Johnson-Sardella.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And this question also goes to our village attorney. In reviewing the loan documents, besides any prepayment penalties, have you come across anything else that would create an issue for us if we were to decide to move over?
I have not seen the loan documents that are associated with this ordinance. They will be provided once it passes on first reading.
Okay.
But those certainly are the things that we would be looking to is there a prepayment penalty? Do the terms and conditions and the finalized documents reflect that which were put forth by the bank and their commitment letter? That you do have use of the discretionary access to those funds is obviously important. So those are the primary things that we would be looking at, but I cannot tell you what they say because I frankly have not yet seen them.
Of course. And what I meant was it was in our existing loan. Is there anything that you've seen in reviewing those documents that would, we don't want to find something out after the fact and when we move forward?
No. I mean, certainly the bank is obligated, the current bank is obligated to provide us with, provide the city, the village with a payoff letter and a satisfaction once that is paid. So I don't see anything there that would be a cause of concern or that would prohibit us from moving forward with this transaction and paying off the existing loan, as is currently being proposed by administration.
Thank you. Commissioner Bill?
Yeah, I believe we're required to keep according to what we're thinking of, we're required to keep $70,000 in the account, which is the yearly amount of the payments.
Actually, what we've been required to keep at least that much in account. I believe the funds from our half-penny sales tax entirely go into that account.
So we're looking at an additional $200,000 that they're going to have of ours for the term of the loan.
220.
I mean, certainly
Which is
if
going to
it-
be, that's a lot of money over
If it
10
reaches
years.
297,000, we just pay off the loan. I mean,
Yeah,
let's-
so I'm saying it's quite a bit of money over the course of the years. And my thought is the same thing. We could easily burn through $7,000 in attorney's fees over the period of time. And even in fact, and then if we win, now we in fact, if we want to move it, we still have to wind up paying the additional $7,000 with our fees and their fees, and the rate will probably have gone up. Yeah, so I guess my thought is, it seems to me it would be the prudent thing to do, to pay the 3,500 and 3,500, and as long as there isn't anything else, any other surprises, to go ahead and move the money.
Commissioner Ross, did you have a comment?
I just looked at the loan documents, and that prepayment penalty from the current lender ended May 10th, 2018. So going forward, there's no prepayment penalty. So in the end, we're not going to have a $5,100 savings over the life of the loan. We're actually going to pay about $1,400 to get the refinancing done to free up the half-penny sales tax money.
Well, if we take that $200,000 and put it into an actual interest-bearing account, it currently isn't gaining any interest, but it would take no time to make up that amount to make us break even. I mean, and that's the thing, that currently the account that is in the control account, we're not drawing interest on it.
Okay.
It's just sitting there.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just concerned that the ordinance itself says that there'll be a $5,100 savings, and that's not correct. So I would like to, if we're going to go forward with this, correct the ordinance, either take out that paragraph or in fact reflect what the difference will be.
If I may, your observation, Commissioner Ross, is in fact correct. However, and attorneys make our living parsing language. The particular whereas clause references, and it's an issue of drafting, says that there will be a savings with respect to the loan interest. Whether or not that then ends up being a total wash or even slightly negative because of the cost associated with the legal review, that's something that yes, affects ultimately what the total savings is, but you will experience a savings on the interest
Okay.
if I read it correctly.
I mean, to me, it seems a little misleading when there's not going to be a net savings to say, yes, there's going to be a savings. Like, for example, when we post our ad valorem, when we advertise for our ad valorems, even though the rate is the same, we have to say this is going to be an increase of your taxes because the impact is an increase in taxes. So I just like to be straight with people, and I would feel more comfortable if we didn't say there's going to be a savings when there really isn't. And we don't have to say anything else, just the need to refinance.
If it's the direction of the commission, that whereas clause and any other similar reference in the ordinance can be either revised or eliminated. That's at the will of the commission.
My thoughts, I'm sorry, did you?
No, go ahead.
No, please, go ahead.
I see how our village attorney is reading it, and I would agree with that reading, but I also, because I see it as being a savings in the interest, and that's a true statement. But I also understand what Commissioner Ross is saying. I guess if you take it as a whole, I mean, wanting to give everyone a full picture, maybe it makes sense to remove the language because we're giving half of a story rather than, I guess, the full story. Because, let's say a layperson, you and I reading this, we understand it's a savings and the interest. Someone else reading it might just think it's a savings and misunderstand. So maybe the best way to handle it is to remove.
Again, if that's the will of the commission as a whole, it's, again, remove it and that'll be that.
If I may, I think one of the major benefits or one of the major reasons and the motivation to do this is the fact that they're holding on to almost the amount of money that we've borrowed, not quite, but there's a significant amount of money that's being held up and tied up. Maybe I'm not seeing it, but it would seem to me that that could be put into the clause as the motivation. So that might be a whereas you want to add so they understand why it is we're changing in the first place. That's just, because that is ultimately the main reason. It isn't a couple $1,000s on one side or the other that's motivating us to go through all this, if I may. So, just one moment. So, I'm going to have to agree with most everybody here. I just don't see a reason to go down a litigation site to argue over what most of us, or many of us, believe is not a valid reason for people to hold on to money. I mean, it's like taking out a car loan. For example, if a car costs $50,000, you have to put $30,000 in the account for me to borrow $50,000. It doesn't make any legal sense to me, or common sense for that matter. So I think the motivation for moving the money is we moving forward, we'd like to, one, we have a bank that we're working with, and the bank seems to be willing to work with us. And secondly, why would we have them hold on to money that they're then lending for us? So, and with a cash flow issue, with $1 million being out for the hurricane, it seems to me prudent to make sure we have enough money freed up in case we do need that cash flow issue. And I think that is the motivation, and therefore I would recommend we put a whereas clause to something to that effect.
So the fourth whereas clause refers to the debt service account that's required, and it says that the new financing arrangement will not require that debt service account.
Yeah, but the amount in there is significant, and we're not talking, most people don't know the amount that's in there, so I'm recommending at least you add an amount in there, which is currently at. Right, so which is currently at $221,000. I would just recommend putting that, because that really is the motivation for us doing this. Am I misunderstanding?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the motivation. So, I mean, that's
So-
the only reason to do this, really.
So, but I think, and I agree with removing the clause, because it is a little misleading that if you say there's a 5,100 less, it's true. There's nothing
No,
that's
it's-
false in that.
There's 5,100 saved in interest.
Correct, correct. But with closing costs and other things, we just don't know. So I think I'd be more inclined to remove it just so it doesn't appear that we're misleading as well.
If it's the consensus of, or the direction of the commission, majority of the commission, we will, the whereas clause starting on sentence number 31, we will delete that and put in its place a whereas clause that states that by refinancing the loan as proposed, it will provide the village access to $220,000 in change that's currently being held.
Or you could modify the one on 22, which is fine as well, on line 22.
Yeah, I would consider just modifying the one up on line 22.
Yeah.
You can include a line refinancing the half-cent tax fund, and you currently.
Or just, then we just simply delete the paragraph, the whereas starting at 31 and 32.
Right, and then
Okay.
just abbreviate the 22. Yep.
Okay.
Do we have a consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
With those changes, is there a motion?
I'm sorry, I just had another comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
One more comment. In today's agenda, it's not attached, but the previous agenda had sort of a commitment letter from Florida Community Bank. And one of the terms has to do with financial reporting. And we are told that on the closing date, the village will be in compliance with all of the terms and provisions of the documents, one term of which deals with audited financial statements and requires that the village have its audit completed and furnished to the bank within 270 days of the end of the fiscal. As of today, we are 311 days beyond the end of the fiscal, so I just want to make sure that we're not going to be in default when we sign the papers.
We've already received approval based on our 2016 audit, and so our 2017 audit, they're aware that we're working on that. It will be done by September 30th, so the bank is aware of that.
Okay, we just need to make sure that that's reflected in the paperwork.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Then I'm happy to make a motion, please. Make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2018-4 as amended. Oh, I'm sorry, we have public comment on the first reading of an ordinance.
That is true. My
So-
apologies.
But we can make the motion and then open it up.
Okay, we make the
Not
motion?
take a vote yet.
And we won't take a vote, that's fine.
So, make a motion, we approve ordinance 2018-4 with the amendments discussed and approved by consensus.
And is there a second, and we will not take a vote?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Open for public comments. Thank you, thank you, Mr. Ross.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard, that
Thank you.
first time reading of an ordinance is normally open to public comments. So
Thank you.
actually, I kind of like it this way, so we could hear your discussion, and we should do the public comment afterwards. But my only point I would want to make is that we really should get, before you decide, find out what the refi costs are. And I find it, after reading the language many times, I don't understand what the disagreement is with the bank, especially since they appeared to have agreed with it before that the money wasn't frozen. It doesn't make any sense. It also I don't think it makes any sense to fight a battle that is just going to cost us money and be non-productive if we can move forward with a new bank as long as we don't have any significant costs in doing so. So, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comments regarding this ordinance? None? Okay. There was a motion
Mayor,
on...
may I address
Yes?
Mr. Ross's comments? I spoke with the bank today. There are no closing costs with this. My understanding is the only cost to refinance this is the cost of the attorneys, and that's what I learned from the bank. So.
Okay, thank you.
Could we please, when we bring this back for second reading, just get that in writing?
In writing,
or-
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could have everything at that point solidified so that,
will be,
that
yes.
everybody is very clear in what, because this is a big thing for the public. Financial transparency is really critical, and I think we're all agreeing on that. So as long as we have everything in front of us and it's put out very early so everybody who can see the reasoning and the rationale as well as the amounts. So that way it's very clear. Thank you very much. I know sometimes it's hard going back and forth, but thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. So we'll take a vote since it's an ordinance. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Chapman,
That's a yes?
Vice Mayor Tudor,
Yes.
Commissioner Butte,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson Sarder,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0. Excuse me, ordinance passes 5-0. First reading. Resolution 10A, Village Attorney.
Resolution number 2018-20, resolution of the mayor and village commission of the village of Biscayne Park Board authorizing the village manager to execute federally funded subawarding grant agreements between the village of Biscayne Park and the state of Florida Division of Emergency Management to obtain federal disaster recovery funds, providing for an effective date and for all other purposes.
Thank you. Manager?
Yes. We have just received our first sub-award agreement from FEMA, and we have 5 projects with FEMA currently as a result of Hurricane Irma.
Could you just explain it briefly so everybody understands where we are? This is a big chunk of change.
I'm trying to do that, yeah.
Go ahead, thank you.
So currently have 5 separate projects with FEMA. Each one will receive a sub-award grant that needs to be filled out, signed, all of that. This is our first one. It is for $3,731. It's also our smallest one. But the reason I wanted to bring this to commission is I know there's going to be 4 more of these coming. And because we do want our reimbursement from FEMA as quickly as possible, I'm looking to the commission for permission to go ahead and sign them as they come in without having to come back to commission on each one. Because it's very large sums of money on some of the remaining ones, on hopefully all of the remaining ones, then I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that it is okay for me to get these, have the attorney approve them, sign them, and keep it going to try and move this money back to the village as quickly as possible. What this does is once this is signed, it goes back to FEMA. It permits FEMA to send the money to the state of Florida, who then goes through their process through the FloridaPA.org portion of this, and they do their thing, and then they ultimately send us a check. So we want to keep this all moving as quickly as possible through the many governmental hands that it's going to go through. So
Thank
that was
you.
it.
Are there any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Johnson-Sardella? I'm sorry, I can't see. So. Nope, not yet. Commissioner Bilt?
I think I heard on the news today, just in passing, that the federal government has finally approved FEMA paying the state of Florida for the hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
But it happened today.
Well, I've heard of a couple municipalities that are
Yeah.
starting to get money back.
Yeah.
And so I've heard of that. I think Cutler Bay and I believe North Bay Village received a check recently. So we want to, get in there and
Yeah.
get in line for ours as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Commissioner Ross?
So what I've seen happen in other cities, as, I don't know, it's a way for me to pass time is look at agendas and minutes in other cities for fun. What I've seen them do is get the sub-grant agreement and get that first payment, and then the payments that come in afterwards are considered amendments to the sub-grant agreement. And in reading the transmittal from Florida PA, it sounds like they're saying the same thing. It can be a lengthy process, so we have everyone sign the agreement on the first distribution, and then there will be amendments to execute following that. I think that this is on page 31 on my PDF. I don't know on the paper what it is. But it's May 1st transmittal from Florida PA to the manager. And so I just want our resolution to reflect, sort of follow what they're saying. They're saying, we want you to sign this sub-agreement, and as we roll out other payments, there'll be amendments to the sub-agreement. And just so that we don't have to come back here and review it again, I want to give you the proper authority for what they're asking.
And so my understanding was that there would be a grant agreement with each project. That was the way it was explained to me. I see what you're saying now, looking
So
back
it
at this.
says, the official sub-grant agreement will be executed upon the obligation of each applicant's first project worksheet,
Okay.
and each will be amended upon subsequent project obligations.
Mm-hmm. I see it.
Right. Just a matter of tweaking the language, I think,
Sure.
on the resolution.
Attorney? Do you need a moment? While he's looking over that, are there any other comments from commissioners regarding the intent? We're just going to take a minute, get through the legal stuff. Bear with us.
What I would propose, Madam Mayor, Commission members, is then modify the existing Section 2 of the resolution, which currently reads, "The Village Commission, the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, authorizes the village manager to execute federally funded subaward and grant agreements," and I would propose inserting, "and all other required documents between the Village of Biscayne Park and the State of Florida Department of Emergency Management to obtain federal disaster recovery funds for the village." And that would cover any amendments, in my opinion, as the commission has discussed.
Commissioner Johnson-Sardella.
The only issue I might have with that language is any other documents. If it's something that's outside of the scope of what we're looking at right now, then we've basically given the authority to sign off on those things, and there may be something that should come before us that's different than what we're looking at now. Because our understanding is that we're having the manager execute this sub-agreement and any amendments to it, which would relate to the 4 additional projects. But documents includes more than that.
How about, well, I'm not going to wordsmith it. Requirement docs associated with this. Could there be some language regarding the type of documents?
Related
How
to
about some-
Hurricane Irma?
Something like the main agreement and any amendments there too.
Or just add
Well,
amendments?
it's, realistically, what's going to come to me is either going to be another federally funded subaward and grant agreement like we currently have here, or an amendment to it. So that would be what we're looking for authorization to sign.
Give him a minute. Let him do his job.
Okay. Let's try this. Section 2 would read, the Village Commission, the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, authorizes the village manager to execute federally funded subaward and grant agreements and all other required documents or amendments between the Village of Biscayne Park and the State of Florida Department of Emergency Management to obtain Hurricane Irma federal disaster recovery funds for the village.
That do it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. With that change, is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve Resolution 2018-20 as amended with the language that the attorney just read us.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
10B, when you have a moment, village attorney.
Yes, Resolution 2018-21, a resolution of the Mayor and Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, authorizing the appropriate village officials to execute an agreement for the provision of a Vista Tennis Program, Academy Program between the Village of Biscayne Park and Vivian Strantz, providing for an effective date. Give me a moment, if I may. The actual title of the resolution is slightly different than that in the agenda page here. So I'm going to read what was, because after reading the title that's on the agenda, I immediately recognized it's slightly different than what I ultimately drafted. So resolution number 2018-21. Resolution of the Mayor and Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, approving an agreement between the Village of Biscayne Park and Vees Tennis Academy for the provision of a professional tennis instruction program at Ed Burke Recreation Center, authorizing the village manager to execute the agreement and expend budgeted funds on behalf of the village and providing for an effective date. The difference between what is in your agenda page and what's in the packet itself is the actual name of the entity is Vees Tennis Academy, Inc.
Okay.
So, and it's not an extension, it's actually an original agreement. So the title that's in the agenda package has been also modified. I've already provided the final version to the village clerk, and will be which will be executed.
Okay. Are there any, I'm sorry, village manager, would you care to?
Sure. This is our standard contract with people providing classes and instruction through our recreation department. The Tennis Academy is something that hasn't been offered here. We're looking at a portion of it would probably be done on the racquetball courts, and then additionally they'll use the basketball court, depending on what specific is being taught during that day. I've spoken with our recreation manager, Issa. He's very, very excited about bringing this to the village, and so it's hopefully another revenue-generating option for our recreation center.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Ross.
When's the commencement date?
I believe it should start as soon as we get it approved at commission. So I know
I
that-
just asked that because
Mhm.
it wasn't something that we contemplated when we were talking about budget last year, so it's not going to be something in the budget. But it's only going to be, there's 2 months left
Yeah.
of this year.
Is
And,
this a
I mean-
cost?
So just wondering what the cost would be.
There shouldn't be any cost to the village on this. This should actually be revenue generating for the village.
So it's a user pass-through cost.
It is, yes.
Commissioner Bill?
Yeah, well, we say what we divide the money that comes in, the revenues.
Mhm.
Should it also say there, less collection expenses? Because if we're doing it via credit card, there's a slight collection expense. And even though it's only like 2 or 3%, that should be split evenly, I think, between the parties. Or-
I would have to check on that and see how that works. I mean, that's not in our contract. It's not the way we do with our other instructors currently. I believe they tend to collect the funds and then, transfer them over or turn them over to the village, to ISA. And we both they and ISA tracks how many people are attending so that we, are on
So
the
do
same
they
page.
absorb the collection expense, or
I'm sorry?
do they absorb whatever collection expense, if it's credit card, or?
Yeah, I mean, we aren't accepting credit cards, so it's all done in cash or check
Okay.
right now. So there's not one at this point.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Johnson Sardella?
Yes, my comment goes to the locations of where I guess the lessons are going to take place. Like you mentioned, the racquetball walls and the basketball courts. If the basketball courts are going to be used, and even the racquetball, I guess what I'm asking is ISA prepared to set up some sort of like scheduling posting so that the public that uses the basketball courts or the racquetball, they know when these activities will be going on so that there's no issues of feeling like they're being pushed out or something like that, so that everybody's aware of when this stuff takes place.
Yeah, it will be publicized definitely, so that we'll have, it's like we do all of our other classes. We have schedules of when the classes are, and that's what this will be as well. And so.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Nope.
No.
Nope. Any other comments? Okay. Is there a motion on this resolution?
I make a motion to accept?
Resolution 2018-21.
Dash 21.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
10C, Village Attorney.
Resolution 2018-22, a resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, supporting renewable energy installation and waiving permit fees for such installations for a period of 1 year, providing for an effective date.
Commissioner Ross, this is your item.
Yes. So we created a clean energy coastal corridor and appointed Y Green as the administrator for that corridor back in August of 2013. In the backup materials, it talks about some of the construction projects, some of the home improvement projects that they have funded in the village for a combined amount of $1.4 million. And I did receive the information earlier from a resident from Ms. Kuehl in the village. I have these search terms on my Google alerts so that I can see things as they occur. And there are arguments on both sides of whether to use a PACE program or not use a PACE program for your financing. We really are not promoting it, but can't say that we endorse it. I am thinking about possibly bringing in some other program and program administrators that do PACE program outside of Y Green, because I'm seeing more and more cities are allowing their residents that access to that finance. And it's definitely not for everyone. It's only for a certain niche of people, but everyone has to make their own finance decisions, and we're not pushing one way or another. We're just providing the access for people who may want to use that as an option. Certainly, all of the disclosures are required by law, and this is what what people have to do when they decide on what kind of financing they're going to get. My intent with bringing this item, as I've seen other cities do, is to not only relieve the cost of the permitting fee, but also to create some excitement about renewable energy and the photovoltaic systems, solar systems. I spoke with our building permit coordinator, who told me that as long as he's been here, he hasn't seen one permit come in for a solar panel system. And although there are a couple installed in the village, you see them when you're driving around, you could probably count them on one hand. And given that we were without power for so many days after the hurricane last year, and more people are wanting to pull away from FPL or support alternate sources of energy, I wanted to offer this for our residents, and understanding that we have limitations on our revenues and don't want to give away the farm. I was proposing to do it for 1 year, which could be renewed by the commission, this time next year. The permit coordinator ran some numbers for me, and we estimated that permit fees would be approximately $420 for a solar panel installation, hypothetically costing $15,000. So that's the proposal. Aside from the $420 approximately, there's $67 that's the county's money, and I'm not proposing to waive the county's fee. I don't think we are even authorized to do that. So that is my proposition with Resolution 2018-22, and I ask the commission to support me. Open.
Yeah,
Commissioner
I
Bill?
guess, I don't think it would change the meaning of the ordinance at all, and maybe I'm incorrect, if we got rid of the first three whereases. Because it seems to me there, we are actually saying we're pushing Y, green, and pace. So my thought would be, just considering it in the interest of the residents to support renewable energy, get rid of everything above that. And we also have here by waiving building permit and other fees. Well, other fees are the expense, I would imagine, of plan review, and that we have to pay for. We pay for plan review. I think it's, the manager would know better than I do. Do we not break it down into building permit and plan review?
It would really depend on the project. I don't know with solar that we would necessarily have to do that. I mean, realistically, that would be just an electrical. Well, there would be some structural too, so.
Yeah,
But we pay for that.
Yeah.
So we're spending money that we're not getting back. But the actual permit fee, I would like to be able to waive whatever we would make on it, but not other fees. Because it says here we're waiving other fees. Other fees are, I would think, could be considered the plan review.
Right.
And
we would still charge the inspection fees, inspector fees.
so if we
like
just say waiving building permit fee, would that in fact allow us to charge all the other fees that are out-of-pocket expenses?
Yeah.
I-
That is.
That's what I'm asking, is it all in one?
Yeah,
Here-
that is all in one.
here's my, I'm just gonna, if I may,
Right.
one of my bigger concerns, and the attorney can comment on this, I think, I talked to a colleague of mine who's worked in solar done installations all over the world. I recall one story on Coral Gables where he tried to install it, and the fees were outstanding. It was incredible there. The cost. I think the intention of this really was for areas where there's a bigger fee. But before we make a decision, I really would like to hear from our finance person, because he has kind of two expertise. If I may call him, if you all would not object, I'd like to get some more information for the commissioners per our conversation. Would you like to, Karen, discuss your two hats that you wear?
Yeah, lot more than 2 hats. I don't know if I'm an expert in any of them, but thank you for that. I am the executive director for the Green Corridor, your close cousin of the Coastal Corridor. And actually, the Green Corridor is your finance arm at this point because of the timing of bonds and things like that. And that's my expertise too. But as far as the Green Corridor's role and the permit waiver process, I can give you, you've hit on all the major points. With the one in Coral Gables, the little kernel in there is accepting the pre-engineered certified plans that come with the solar equipment, and they're pre-engineered as a package, basically. And what happens is those come to the building department, like the one in Coral Gables as a prime example, or South Miami, the larger, more complex, heavy commercial, all that included. They go through thousands of dollars of potential reviews. So the first step was to accept the pre-engineering certified plans without making them redraw them every time. So that was the biggest expense. And the second one is the basic permit fee, $200, $300, whatever it is per municipality. So the Green Corridor encourages that as a best practice to encourage solar. That's how they would put it.
Now I'm going to ask you to switch hats and be our finance person, if you would mind, please. Thank you.
Well, anything that's going to lower your revenue is probably a bad practice weeks before your budget workshops and your budget acceptance. So I would encourage that it sounds like the numbers are nominal if you've had none. That would be very challenging to come up with a reason not to do it because it's free. There's no savings, there's no expense, right? But there could be one, there could be multiple. The other, so yes, your finance director clearly thinks, and I'm speaking in the third person as a joke, that it's bad timing really to look at fees when you really don't know your final plan. That's my advice. Whatever that's worth.
Thank you very much. I have a third issue that I'd like to discuss, which is precedent. I absolutely am for as many energy issue savings as we can and helping people find a way to do that. My concern is setting precedent. We pick a technology to do this with now, then the question is what else and when, and it just sets a precedent. And I think the fees are so minimal here that it's not going to. And I agree with one of the residents who brought it up. I think the fees are so minimal. I don't think that's going to be an impetus to motivate somebody to do it or not to do it. And so for that reason, unfortunately, I can't support this as currently is written. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm along the same lines. One of the concerns has to do with what the finance director was talking about. We're kind of rolling into budget season here, and even though my gut tells me that the number of solar projects that we're going to see pop up would be none.
Under current technology, that's the key. Under current
And
technology.
one of the issues with solar is, even during the hurricane, people with solar panels weren't able to use their solar for power because of, I guess, the backbeat on the lines for FPL. So there's a whole nother segment that you have to do that's really cost prohibitive for a lot of people. It's just, I just have I just have some concern. I don't believe that the fees are anything that's going to really bankrupt the village, but just from principle's sake, while we're rolling into this, I just not comfortable waiving any type of fees. I don't mind promoting renewable energy, doing something along those lines, but anything tied to actually, with even the potential of impacting the revenue of the village, I just can't support.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson-Still.
I concur with Vice Mayor Tudor's comments and the finance director's comments also. I can't support it at this time. I'm willing to support anything for renewable energy. I think that we've got maybe some vehicles that are up for replacement, and maybe we can start to look into having electric vehicles, maybe for the code vehicle that from the last meeting, I believe our manager told us needs to be replaced, and some other vehicles. And I think we can start there, but for the reasons that the finance director mentioned and my fellow commissioners, I can't support it at this time.
I just want to add, I think I see a lot of communities, I don't know if it's still going on, but the use of solar cooperatives. I don't know if you want to speak on it. I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my last statement if I was given a chance, so thank you for that. there are initiatives that are out there that are fairly new in the business to lower the costs, and they're cooperatives. You are participating in one. They started out regionally, one in Miami Beach, one in the Gables, one in South Miami. You know, they had 4 or 5 of them. And basically the board has authorized them countywide activity, and the board subsidizes their salesperson, Jody Finner. She's probably been here before. And you know, any message I could give her or them to encourage them to come see you, and they've already talked to a lot of your residents. They've had the co-op meetings. So if they haven't done a project this year, that, you know, it's sort of that second year momentum, I think people in this area will probably jump up to the second one. And there's savings there because they're buying as a group, and so they get a cost benefit.
Yes, we were looking for our own home into that solar co-op and met Judy, and I was still getting emails because there's still a lot of excitement about it. Yeah, yeah. So, thank you for hearing me out on it. At least we've had this conversation, and hopefully that gets people thinking about solar and moving into solar. I made it for only 1 year, thinking that's what other cities are doing, Miami Shores and some other cities in the county. Just to close the item out, I'm going to make a motion to approve Resolution 2018-22. And I suspect there will be...
Is there a second?
If we have a second, we can discuss, right?
We've discussed it's now for a vote. If you have a second, there's a vote.
I mean, we have discussed.
I guess my thought is, would you consider tabling it for 2 months? Because everybody's saying this is the time where we're worrying about funds coming in. So instead of just voting it down, saying maybe in 2 months we should come back and revisit.
I think maybe somebody else could bring it up in 2 months.
Okay.
Okay, so there's not a second. All right, motion does not get brought forth. I just want to thank Commissioner Ross for having the courage to bring something like this forward. I do appreciate all the work that goes behind that, so thank you. Okay, for old business, 11A, revised resolution 2018 in agreement with Calvin Giordano and Associates, village attorney.
Resolution number 2018-17, a resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, approving the professional service agreement between Calvin Giordano and Associates, Inc. and the Village of Biscayne Park for the provision of building plan review and inspection services and/or municipal planning services, and authorizing the village manager to execute the agreement and expend budgeted funds on behalf of the village and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Manager, before you go on, I just want to let the audience know there was one correction that was done. The meeting, instead of saying just "and" under the resolution, it says "and/or," which is the way the RFP was written. I just want to clarify so they're aware. Thank you.
That's it. That's the only change this
sorry,
last time.
So. Sorry about that. So we'll open up for discussion. I know we discussed this quite extensively. Is there any discussion, further discussion on this? I think there was also some changes as well before last meeting, which was we added some of the provisions for municipal planning, which I believe was, where was the extra 3 things done? Hold on. I believe it was 2.12 through 2.15, is that correct? Okay, and for those of you in the audience who were not here last meeting, or for those of you will watch this subsequently, those items were added. That was 2.1.12, 2.1.13, 2.1.14, and 2.1.15, which was allowing for plan review if you choose to use those services, but not necessitating it. Is that my interpretation correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, so is there any discussion, commissioners? Okay, if not, is there a motion to approve Resolution 218-17?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2018-17.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great, congratulations. Okay, 12A is conflicting dates of commission meetings with other events. Manager Manners?
Okay. Coming up on August 28th, we have our second budget workshop currently scheduled for that date. It is in conflict with the primary election, or the primary election will be held on that day as well. It's up to the commission whether it's a consensus of the commission whether you'd like to go ahead and hold it, hold our commission meeting or a budget workshop at that time, or if you'd like to change that to another date. We just wanted to bring that up. Additionally, the same is happening on November 6th. We have a regular commission meeting, and it's in conflict with the general election. So,
Okay, we'll open for discussion.
I'm fine with moving it to the 29th if it's,
Can we all check our dates and see if that will work?
I'm available on that date as well.
That works for me.
Works for me.
Commissioner Ross?
There's a Public Safety Advisory Board meeting that night.
Yeah, I'll discuss with the chair.
Okay, so the
I mean, it's fine on my calendar, but I'm not sure where they meet, if they're going to meet here.
yes, please.
We were originally scheduled to meet
You have to, yeah.
Dick Rogers, 655 Northeast 118th Street. We were originally scheduled to meet on the 22nd, and then we were asked to move to the 28th because the information I received was that your first
First budget, yeah.
was going to be on the 22nd.
Yes.
So I don't know if the other members of the board have been noticed about a potential change in dates, but I would assume we could move back to the 22nd.
I think we have, what, 2 dates? The 22nd?
Yeah, we have our first.
The 20, just the April 22nd is our first. This would be
Yes.
our second, so actually both of those dates are would be taken. You'd have to change the date again.
Okay.
Could you do it, I'm trying to think.
what about August 30th?
For us, I have no problem with that date. August 30th?
I may get here a little late. I have a meeting down in Brickell.
Would it be possible for the Public Safety Advisory Board to meet on August 30th? And then we could keep it to the 28th for us?
Would
I
that-
can't speak for the other members.
We can present it to the members of the board and see if they're available to meet on the 30th, so.
Can we change ours to the 21st? It's a Tuesday where we would normally meet. We're used to meeting on
Well,
Tuesdays.
no, we've got our first.
You have
budget
to have it-
hearing
you have to have
is-
it apart.
This is
Can't
for our
have it.
second budget hearing. Our
Can't
first
have-
one's on the 22nd.
So you can't have 2 days.
Yes,
Right.
And
that's
so
why
our
they
second one
moved
needs
it.
to be after that date.
No, what I'm saying is so that they can still do theirs, and we can do ours on the 21st. They can do the 22nd.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
See what
So
I'm saying?
they would keep the original date.
Right.
Okay.
Would the 21st work for everybody?
And I'm going to defer to the clerk on that. What's,
So we're
That's-
going to
that
have
still
back-to-back? We're going to have back-to-back workshops?
No, I don't think that'll work.
No,
we
I
still
think
do
he's
one
talking
on
about
the
moving the first workshop to the 21st.
And then the
Public-
second on
yeah,
the
Public Safety can
28th.
meet on their
Normal date of the 22nd, right, and then we would meet on the 28th. So is everybody available on the
We'd meet on the
21st and the 20?
29th.
The 29th.
I'm sorry. The 29th. So is everybody available on the 21st and the 29th?
Yes.
I am, yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Bilt?
Yes.
Commissioner Ross, yes. Okay.
Fine.
So if it's okay with the Public Safety Advisory Board, you'll read on your regular scheduled date of the 22nd. We'll be meeting on the 21st and on the 29th for the first and second budget workshop. Okay?
and, excuse me, Paul? That works for you?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I neglected. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Manager, I didn't ask you either. And clerk, I didn't ask you either. We're all good?
How about the November 6th?
Okay. Now the next one is for, and we have a consensus on that. So the next one is November 6th is the regular commission meeting, which is in conflict with the general election. There has been quite a few comments I have also received. I know we had discussed that, but the manager's requesting that we move it. So the question would then be which day? Manager, you have a suggestion?
One second, sorry, my calendar's not cooperating. right
Neither
this
is mine.
second.
It must be calendar freeze moment. Might I suggest that we consider the 13th, which is a Tuesday night? Would that work?
And that, I believe, will also give us enough time to have the election results in.
I would think so. Manager Manners, the 13th, would that be an issue?
1 second, just looking at this, I seem to remember last year, we had a commission meeting at the same time as, I believe it was a special election.
If that was a special election, smaller.
Yeah.
This
that
is a
was.
very different
Okay.
animal.
So, we could do, there's a Public Art Advisory Board on the 7th, the 8th, Thursday the 8th is available. So we could move the commission meeting to that night.
I have no problem with that. Is everybody available on the 8th of November?
But does the 8th give us enough time to get the results? Because whoever's elected has to
Yes.
take office on the 8th.
So the number, we'll know the result by the number, but we won't have it certified.
Right.
It won't be
by-
certified till December. That's what happened last time, was December swearing.
I
So-
think it takes 10 days to be certified.
Yeah. I don't have a concern for that, because that's what we did last time, and then we swore everybody in December, it was December, so, unless the clerk sees any issue with that? Nope. Okay, so is there a consensus, and does everybody have availability on the 8th?
Yes.
On the 8th, right?
I do, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Good.
Paul? Awesome, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and move on to 12B, Commissioner Bilt. This is your item. Would you care to go ahead and?
Yes, well, since we've been told that we actually do need to give direction to the Public Safety Advisory Board, my thought would be give them something as wide an area as possible, have them research any and all items that could help the public safety of the village. That's the direction. And then bring back to us any
Okay.
specific
Do you want
items that they
to,
can
do you
have.
want to split these into two, so we have them separate discussions on them, since they're actually two items in one? So we'll do the.
Yeah, Parker Park, well, yeah, that
Okay.
would be public.
Okay, so we'll
safety.
start with Public Safety Advisory Board. Open for comments from commissioners? Commissioner Ross?
I think it should be a little more descriptive than just broad range, or, or setting some kind of priorities of what do we want them to look at first. Because, otherwise, we're really giving them an instruction of no instruction.
May I ask if anybody would object to ask, they've been working on this for 3 months, we wanted to give them some time, I guess, to get to know one another and figure out what some of their issues are. Would you care to at least hear from them first before we move on? I think that would be appropriate.
Thank you for the opportunity to address that issue. What we have looked at and discussed primarily at our first 3 meetings was traffic calming. Our first meeting, we did have some public input, and those members of the community who were at that meeting seemed most concerned with the through traffic in the village, and speeding and the volume of traffic coming off of the main thoroughfares onto the lesser thoroughfares in the village. And so we have been looking at traffic calming methods used in other jurisdictions. We have discussed them. And probably going forward, either our next meeting or the meeting after, I think we will have a list of suggestions, recommendations to aid in traffic calming. One of the directions we have is if we do it at point A, we need to do it at B, C, and D, so we don't just relocate the problem to a different area. We're also looking to do this in a cost-effective manner. understanding that the village has a budget that they have to live within. And so we are looking at ways to do this with a low fiscal impact, but that will accomplish the goal of slowing traffic on all the through streets, 10th, 8th, 9th, 7th, 6th, we don't have any real control over, and to some extent Griffin, where we do have some control. So that's what we're looking at now. Going forward, we will start seeking your guidance on any areas in crime prevention. One of the things we have noted, and it's minor, but it's addresses. I spent 32 years in law enforcement. One of the most difficult things you can do going to an emergency call is finding an address on a house after dark. Sounds silly, sounds simple, but it isn't, because everybody's address is in a different place. Some people, the address is the same color as the house. Some people, the numbers are 3 inches high. Some people, they're 8 or 10 inches high. So anyway, but we're going to look into areas that will, again, with the same thought in mind, kind of a universal evolutionary approach to change, to make the village safer and to help the residents of the village live happier, safer lives.
Thank you very much, sir. So the two things that he addressed was traffic calming and crime prevention. I know he didn't specifically discuss lighting. I know we have discussed lighting. I think that is something we should look at. These are just some of my suggestions.
Well,
Jim, go ahead.
I guess I'm thinking of a more specific areas of concerns that can have actually multiple specific parts to it. One of the things is traffic mitigation, traffic calming. The other thing is pedestrian safety. To me, those are kind of like the two key things, and they also kind of interconnect as well to a certain extent. So I mean, that's one of the things I like to see the board focusing their attention on, which I know when we talked about establishing this board, we kind of talked about those were the things that we wanted to see. So it looks like that they heeded that, and that's kind of the direction they had been going in. So that's where I would like to see us continue with the board.
So pedestrian safety, traffic, and any type of traffic calming, or
Yeah, traffic calming. And with the traffic calming and mitigation, whatever you want to call it, I want to be very open to the fact that I want, nothing's off the table. I mean, looking at everything. I mean, there's so many different things that are out there that different communities, have utilized. Residents have talked about things in the past: speed circles, speed bumps, traffic circles, street closures. There's a concept about shared streets where it's, for example, here on 7th Avenue, you would actually have one section of the road would be mainly pedestrian traffic, and the other side would be vehicle. And what they've seen is that, so I throw that out there just saying that, I would like to see the board basically have a very open mind looking at everything that's out there and what would actually work for our community. And don't get kind of like lasered in on some of the comments that we've had from residents who, have talked about speed bumps. I mean, that's one thing that they can take a glance at, but I think it's important that they have a very broad view and look at anything and everything. Thank
you. Commissioner Johnson-Serdell?
I pretty much agree with that. I think that traffic calming and pedestrian safety, is one of our concerns. It's been a concern. And if we can have a group really look into this and look at it broadly, thinking outside of the box, what would work for us? I know in our last meeting, I'm not going to remember who mentioned, but I think whether dividing the road in a way, and I think Vice Mayor Tudor just mentioned it, having either a pedestrian walk path or something, looking into that. But I would be happy if they came back to us with something that we could actually move forward with after discussing it ourselves for so long.
If I may ask you another comment, if you don't mind returning, thank you. We're going to get to your board in a moment. Thank you. Sorry, public comments. For the board, currently, you've been looking at a more of a broad stroke, and you've been listening to comments and decisions. Is it possible you could bring back to us, rather, I agree that limiting you in some ways is kind of tying your hands. I think you've kind of heard from the commissioners some of the things we're looking for: pedestrian safety, traffic calming. But there may be other things that you may come up with that we didn't think about that are safety oriented. And I don't disagree that I don't want to close it off and tell you that. I do believe you've kind of heard the priorities. It's been discussed. But I'd like to see you come back to us and bring your suggestions of what your focus has been on. And I don't want to, I know you all meet once a month. But we don't want to delay this either, so we would like to get moving on some things. So is there possible, maybe next month, or is there a time frame in which you might suggest that you could finalize at least your main points that you're starting to focus on for this quarter? Especially as we're coming up to budget season.
And with that in mind, what we have been looking at is some relatively low-cost methods of traffic calming and providing for pedestrian safety that involves a textured paint. Mike, would you like to address that? You're more expert in that than I am.
I'm sorry, Mr. Edmund, you have to, and state your name and address, please.
Mike Redmond, 11804 Northeast 8th Avenue. You have to excuse me, my voice has been failing me as of late. We talked about perhaps just enhancing what we already have. I mean, there's some striping and stop bars and reflective pavement markers that are just not in very good shape. I know the manager said that he's looked into some help from the county, and I don't know where we're at with that, but the simpler things first, like whenever you come up to an intersection at the stop sign, it's bright, well placed, well visible. Stop bars are white, clear, visible. The radiuses are outlined, clear, and visible with the RPMs all in place. It just gives everybody a little more feeling that, I need to do the right thing here. These people are taking care of their end of the deal and the intersection was well maintained. And these are relatively inexpensive enhancements, or not even enhancements, just upgrades. But that was our, original, that was one of our thoughts.
Thank you.
Just the use of a yellow lateral line on the side of the road makes a roadway look narrower. Narrower roadways, people could drive more slowly. The other thing we could use to help between the stop signs, I know we try to have every 3-4 blocks a stop sign, is at some midpoint a painted crosswalk. It sounds simplistic, but it's something that catches a person's eye. Crosswalk, pedestrian, slow down, look for the pedestrian before you blaze through. So it's about creating, if you want, this is from the illusion of a narrower roadway. It was also brought up that there are DOT signs available, shared roadway, watch for pedestrians and bicyclists, that we could get and post throughout the village to draw people's attention to the fact that there are pedestrians, bicyclists using our roadways. So we will hopefully be able to present you with a list of the items we have looked at and examined, and we'll get an agreement on them our next meeting, and I will get that information to you as
Thank you, because that will help with the budget coming up. Thank you for coming up here. Just if we have a consensus, we do want to give them direction. So is the direction they're heading in currently what we're looking to do?
I guess my thought is, if we make it as broad as possible, they know what we're looking for. In case something comes up, they decide, they find all of a sudden, great, maybe we need to do something with the wiring from FP&L or something else. Why are we limiting them at all?
Right, so if they want...
This is our think tank, these are the guys, let them think, let them come up with ideas. Why do we have to tell them they're going to come back to us with projects they're thinking about, and then we can decide then and there which things we want to go. But let them range as wide as they can.
Vice Mayor, I know that you have spearheaded this board. I'd like your input since this was the intention of your board, so originally when you formed it.
You know, as I said before, the intention that I had for the board was to, you know, the commission would give some guidance. We had some guidance when we created the board. But looking at, and I understand about the idea of, you know, you don't want to limit, but I think also at the same time you want to give not stringent, you know, we don't want to paint them into to a tight line about what they have to do, but to give them a general broad sense that, you know, we want to look at, you know, an issue with residents. When we have these meetings, these workshops, the issues that seem to come up with a lot of residents was, you know, they wanted to see traffic mitigation, traffic calming, pedestrian safety was one of those issues. Now, you know, like I said, part of that could encompass also, you know, lighting, and other things along the lines of pedestrian safety, but I think giving them some guidance can kind of help hone them in, because, you know, what I don't want to, personally, what I wouldn't want to see is, you know, them kind of put too much on their plate at one time and looking at too many items. So I think right now, I think it would be good, while they're getting their feet wet and they're working together, to have them focus on the traffic calming, traffic mitigation,
and pedestrian
safety.
Okay. And then their second request was to look at crime prevention issues. I don't have any problem with that since that's what they're looking at now. So I don't have any issue with that. They'll work. I'm sure they've been working with the chief. I know he's been attending the meetings regularly. So, and we have somebody very experienced in that issue. I wouldn't want to not take that expertise. There was one area that I also thought that I don't want to close them off on, and that has to do with FPL and electrical poles. This became a big issue in the hurricane, and we do have one expert at least on there who has some knowledge of that. I would like them to be able to look at that issue if they choose to in the timing there, just because I don't want to lose that expertise. Commissioner Ross.
So I went back and looked at the ordinance that creates the board, and the purpose originally was a pretty broad umbrella regarding public safety management to assist in the implementation of the village's public safety management program by developing and recommending approval of policies and making recommendations to the village commission on public safety related issues. I mean, that encompasses a lot of things. I'm very glad that you're looking into traffic first, traffic calming and pedestrian safety, because those seem to be the things that most people talk about on next door, or when you're walking through the village, conversation comes up. And of course, the chief's been doing a lot of work in that area also with enforcing our traffic signs. You mentioned poles and the FPL poles. That could be a secondary, but it could also be FPL lighting, and I mean, these are things that you can put on your list down the road, things that could enhance the village, and then you'd have to look at both sides of what this community wants by way of lighting. Another area of concern that was a hot topic right after the storm is communication. How are we going to get emergency communications out to people? You know, sort of develop a program that we can pull off the shelf and implement when the time arises for that. I don't really want to say just leave it open, broad to whatever, because then we're not giving the direction that's required in the ordinance. And I'm glad to hear that the work that you started already. I think your focus should be on there because it's easy to go down a rabbit hole in any one of these topics and not be very productive.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think I said it before that I'm in agreement with the traffic calming and the pedestrian safety measures. I also had kind of written here as well what Commissioner Ross just mentioned about hurricane communication. My thought is that it shouldn't be left that broad because we do have to give them direction. Also, I understand that they could come back with a lot of information to us, but we also have our priorities, and we might have to wait months for one of our priorities to be discussed. So it's probably better if we give them something, but I agree with what they're already looking at.
So just to paraphrase everybody, I wrote down what everybody said, make sure I didn't miss anything. It was pedestrian safety, traffic calming, crime prevention is what they were working on as well, lighting, and perhaps FPL pole issues, but the other one was emergency communication. Was there anything that we missed out of those? That's pretty much the direction. Do we have a consensus that that's the direction and in the order for which we read it? That was the other issue. I don't want to predispose the order. Maybe emergency communication should come before lighting and FPL. I don't know. They're kind of together because they're both emergency management issues.
My only comment is the ordinance does not say we have to give them direction.
Okay, but
So
I,
that's-
but
yeah, so it's-
but this way at least they know what our wishes are.
Right.
And since we're going to be funding some of these wishes, it may just help from a funding perspective, especially since we're coming up with budget. Attorney, you look like you may have a comment. Do you have one?
Well, the only suggestion that I might make is to paraphrase the purpose that's in the ordinance, and then give direction, or to the extent you give them direction, is to focus on the issues that have been discussed as their initial focus. But their broad purpose under the ordinance is in fact to look at all public safety issues with an initial emphasis on traffic calming,
Pedestrian safety,
safety,
crime prevention, lighting and electric, and then emergency communication.
I'm sure that'll keep them busy for a while.
Sorry. So do we have a consensus on this? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next one, I believe, is Parks and Parkway Board.
Yeah, actually, one of our residents had mentioned something about this. We've never actually, I do not think we have, ever asked Park and Parkways to come up with a plan for a specific median, whatever median they suggest, a broad idea of what it should be. Pick one median, figure out what trees are there, if we want to stop people from driving across, how they want to do whatever bushes or things need to be done. And that would be a plan for all others. I'm not being specific about saying we want Spanish stoppers, we want coffee plants, but just sort of a basic idea. And let's, as we did there, let's do one median. So we've got one, see how it looks, see how it works, then maybe we can also then continue that onto other medians. But
Okay.
not try and do everything all at one time. Let's just do one. One of the narrow medians, whichever one anybody picks on. I don't care which one it is.
So your direction would then be, rather than trying to do an all-encompassing plan for all the medians, we've done one median. I just want to clarify, we refer to in the village as the wide medians, correct me if I'm wrong, board, median parkways, and then the narrow ones as medians. Would that be that's the term I've heard over the years, so.
Let's use it as median parks and regular medians. If you say parkway, a parkway is something you drive on.
That's fine. Point taken.
And I do know, in fact, they've done the one for 121st Street. I saw some of the drawings. It's great. It's very nice. However, that's a very specific median because it's dividing us from North Miami, which really doesn't apply anywhere else. So do one of the regular medians, whichever one they pick on.
Okay, I'll open, first of all, allow me the courtesy of the board chair to tell us, you've been doing this for many, many years, so.
Right. With regard to the last issue, I just want to state something very simply. With all due respect to the gentleman here on the board, both of which I've known for longer than I'd like to admit, and there isn't one, as far that I've seen, piece of data supporting any traffic calming whatsoever. If you're going to do it, if you're going to ask me to pay for it as a resident, just give me 2 seconds.
Dan, out of respect, I'll do that, but understand that that the rest of the community might want to make comments, and so.
They don't mind. I don't think they mind.
Dan, with all due respect, if you could stick to this with 30 more seconds, please.
As a taxpayer and resident of this community, I would like to see some data, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, for anything they do regarding traffic calming.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, sent y'all an email today pointing out that the Parks and Parkways Board minutes of May 17, 2018 has attached to it a design for landscaping on 121st Street. Did you read that, Artie?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I said it was a good idea.
Okay. So there is reason for us to go. We're generally not terribly much in favor of going through and doing designs for parkways until we've gotten control of some issues in the community, i.e. maintenance and that sort of thing, of our existing parkways and existing landscape. And you addressed that somewhat at your last meeting by making the proclamation that you're going to try to hire a public works manager who might have some skills in these areas. Okay, great, absolutely, positively necessary. Part of what skills I would like that person to have, okay, is the ability to go through the motions of evaluating irrigation maintenance practices, what continuing budget is going to be necessary to maintain anything, and kind of give a threshold as to what we believe that is going to be, so we can design to it. There are just many, many issues, sightline issues to be evaluated and set down such that we design to that. And then, all our medians are not typical. We have 5-foot medians, we have 18-foot medians, we have 55-foot wide medians, we have different things, okay? So there's no typical. There's all sorts of different intersection situations. So coming up with a typical isn't going to work, okay? We can move in that direction. We can make decisions as to what type of plant materials we might want to have, in native, primarily native, flowering materials, etc. So, but we need the interaction of the administration in not just setting us out there and doing something, because when you work in a vacuum and not having input coming back in from what's possible, you spin your wheels and you spend a lot of time, waste a lot of time. So personally, I'd like to see the community move forward on 121st Street, where there's a very unique circumstance associated with the multifamily buildings across the street, where you have residents on the street who are willing to participate in funding that landscape, okay? And the interaction with North Miami that we hope we get might include them contributing a water meter, and then we will go through some process for that particular meeting, whether or not how we deliver the water on that meeting. Do we trench? Do we put a surface-mounted irrigation type system, drip lines, et cetera, to maintain things? So, there's a little bit of a process to go through, and we can start with that. In the meantime, we can get 4 signs that aren't installed yet installed. We can do some of the projects that have been on the agenda of the board and approved by this commission for landscaping around this building and other places. Get that done first.
Okay, I understand that you have, and I just want to be clear, you have a very long list of things you want administration to do. I think and I don't want to speak for Commissioner Bilt, but I think the intent is here, the community has really been advocating improving our medians overall. I think that's been a general consensus, and that was consensus in our workshop. So if I put, and I don't want to speak for Commissioner Bilt, I think, but what he's mentioning, I think he's looking to have an idea of concrete steps of what we're going to do to improve that, whether it's starting with one median to figure it out. You guys did an awesome job on 114th Street. It's beautiful. So the question is what, and I think you were looking at, if I'm not mistaken, the smaller, narrower medians. I think what he's looking for, and I'm not saying we're going to or not doing that, it's open for discussion now, but I think what they're looking to do is, and I think you and I have discussed a list of what you're working on, because every time I read the minutes, my issue is there's so many different things. And it's almost as though the board has an endless list for the manager, and I'd like to see it pare down to what we can do overall to improve it. And I personally would like to see the concrete things for the actual medians themselves.
Can you get them edged?
Okay.
Can you get an edger run down the medians so they look better?
Okay, so
We haven't been able to do it for 4 months.
Okay, so your solution to the medians looking better is to edge them. That is what you're asking for?
Absolutely, a good forward type thing representative of the issue that we're trying to resolve first before we go forward and put a lot more stuff in the ground.
I've been on the median. Well, okay, I'm going to hold off on that comment. I'd like to open it up for the floor. Thank you. Commissioner Johnson-Sardella, any comments?
I mean, I agree with Commissioner Bilt that we need some sort of plan with regard to either starting with one of the medians, whichever one, so that one, we can show the community that we're moving forward on something. As you said, that we have a median out here that they've worked on. That's wonderful. And if we keep moving forward with that, so I'm in agreement.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
After the Butterfly Garden was completed on 114th, there was a lot of positive response from residents. I think some people who were kind of hoping that would be kind of the springboard to see that jump to another area, and because I had a couple residents like, oh well, the median in front of my place, that would be nice if we could do something there. So what I like to do, I know there's bigger scale things that we need to address, and we're looking at that with discussions about hiring a public works manager, somebody who can kind of quarterback that department. But yeah, I'm in agreement. I'd like to see us start biting off some little pieces here and there and start doing some improvements. Have a selection of a median, come back with a design plan of what we can do with that. So I think it's a start. I think we should build off of that goodwill that was created from the 114th Street.
Thank you. Commissioner Ross?
I have to agree with Mr. Keyes. There are a number of items that Park and Parkways Board has already developed plans for. It's the entrance signs that we budgeted for that haven't been installed. It's the landscaping around the log cabin that was budgeted for that we haven't installed. 114th Street became a priority because of post-Irma and having to restore that median, and so you jumped on that, and I appreciate it. When I see the Park and Parkways minutes and I read them because they're attached to our agenda, I asked for them to be attached to the agenda to bring attention to them, to all board minutes, and I see what is a long list. Really, it's a list of things that that if our Public Works Department were able to maintain and keep up with these things, they would not be on this list if they were properly maintained. So I understand what Mr. Keyes is saying about edging those medians, fixing the irrigation on 6th Avenue, pulling out the weeds on 6th Avenue. These are all things that we don't seem to be able to keep up with but we want to add, you know, another project on top of that. I would be so happy if we could just go ahead and put into the ground all of the plantings that have been already, plans have been developed for, and that we're actually budgeted for before we start, you know, taking on other things that is going to sort of create more of a burden on our staff when don't seem to be able to maintain what we already have in place.
Commissioner Belt, this is your item, and then I'll go afterwards.
Yeah, I guess my suggestion, those are all maintenance items. I'm looking for something conceptually. What can we do with a median? Let's pick one median.
We
Let's
can
get it
maintain
done.
it. We can maintain
No,
it.
no, we can maintain everything. That's maintenance items. That's not what the boards are for. The boards are not for maintenance. The boards are there to conceptualize, to figure things out. If we're trying to be specific with safety, and we're saying, oh, no, we want to be specific, but now with park and parkways, we want them to do, they're going to be in charge of everything. I would like them to do, as they say, let's do one median, and let's go from there. It's been years, people have been speaking about the medians. We haven't gotten stuff done. Let's get one done. We did 114th Street. The guys can do it. They do a great job. As long as they do a great job, let's pick out one other one somewhere in the village. I'm not saying which one it is. And as far as waiting for 121st, we got to wait for North Miami. We've got to wait for lots of other stuff. We're not going to just sit and wait if that thing takes a year or 2 years. God knows how long it's going to take North Miami. So let's pick out one median. Let's get a plan. If Park and Parkways is not capable of doing it, let's reach outside to get somebody else to do one particular median. And then we can decide, then we can go to somebody and say, okay, great, these are the list of plans you're thinking about. How much is it's going to cost? Is it going to cost us if we put roses in versus we're going to put daffodils? I don't know anything about plants. But this way we have some sort of an idea. One's going to be understory. We have trees. There's a distance between the trees. We want to stop people from driving across. Obviously, it needs to be something maybe a little bit more dense. But let's do something instead of just waiting. It's been years.
Okay, I'll close out the comments with, I concur that we need to, I think there was such positive response from people for the active progress that was made on one median. I see no deleterious effects in trying to do another. I don't, once again, I know we did one big wide median. I have no objection doing more of those. I think we have an idea of cost going into budget. What I'd like to see is a narrow median, I agree with you, so that we know what the cost of that would be. I realize there is no typical median, having been on the, what was it called back then? Was it called the median committee? I can't recall. Many years ago with you. I would also like to see us move forward and do this. I understand there are maintenance issues, but once again, I think that's not the board's job to do. I think that's the manager's job to do. And I don't disagree that we've had some challenging issues with that, but I also think that we do have a very limited staff. But I do think getting one median and a design for median, I don't think that should be something, it should be something the board does. That's my opinion. So is there a consensus to direct the board to look for to come up with a design on one median, not 121st Street, somewhere else in the village that is one of the narrow medians that they see the most benefit and improvement on?
Yes.
Is there a consensus?
Yes.
I just want a consensus first. Is there a consensus?
Yes.
Why not?
Yes.
Yes? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Is there a time frame? I think it's key to the budget hearing process to at least have some idea of a concrete, and I'd like the plan, I personally would like to see that in writing of some format so we have an idea, not just the drawing of it, but the cost of it, with the help of the staff, of course, so that we don't overtax the board's time. Do we have a consensus on time frame?
I don't know how long it should take. Maybe 3, 6 months? I don't know.
Could you, Dan, would you be so kind as to tell us the time, how long you think that would take you to do one of the medians, since you've been doing this for so long?
Because it's not a typical median, it's only 121st Street. Wait, Dad, it does matter. I'm sorry, it does matter.
That's exactly why you can
because we have to rely upon North Miami.
Let me be clear, Attorney, just as a clarification point, if you wouldn't mind, and Manager, right now, currently, the person who controls the medians on 121st is whom? We turn that control over, if I'm not mistaken, under, I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly.
I don't believe that's the case. I've been told that it's a shared median, I believe, and that both municipalities are responsible for it. A few years ago, there was some sort of non-written agreement, is my understanding, where North Miami would take care of it. That really hasn't happened. And so as a result, the median on 121 has been neglected for years, except for what we've done when we've gone in and cleaned it up a little bit. And
Okay, so is there any, I guess that's a research question, is there a legal ownership of that median? Who owns the median is what my point is.
Well, I mean, we certainly could check the county's database of, you know, the property appraisers website to see who owns what, but to the extent that there's shared ownership, and I say this from practical experience, that half the street, from what I understand, half the street that gives access to my neighborhood is in one city, and the other half is
We have the same,
in
that's the same
another
thing.
city. You know, we had an issue, I'm sure that everyone had, with you know, Hurricane Irma cleanup, and ultimately the other city was the response. We lost electricity because they weren't maintaining the other side, and so they've now come and clear cut everything. Point being is that, generally speaking, in those types of situations, either, you know, one side unilaterally maintains their part, and the other municipality
And what
retains-
splits it is, guess what? The median.
or an interlocal agreement is entered into for joint maintenance and a joint plan. Without researching any further, I would be hard pressed to give you any additional information as to the specifics of that particular median.
Okay, thank you.
From what I know about the median, because I live on 121st
Yeah, that's
Street,
your,
they own half of it, we own half of it. Technically speaking, the dividing line is right down the center.
of the median.
So if we wanted to do something on our half, we could, I believe, but I'm not sure legally, and they have the other half. But
Commission,
it's been half and half, so anything that needs to be done has to be, if it's going to be something that goes more than 5 feet across, it would have to be decided by both, which is not typical throughout the rest of the park.
okay, so Commissioner Ross?
We're talking about 6 blocks worth of median on 121st Street. The projects that have been successful there have been done just by communicating with North Miami and North Miami's administration. And we've done at least 3 cleanup projects along 121st Street since I was elected. I'm sure that the others happened before then, but are we having any conversations with North
Yes, we
Miami's
are.
administration?
Manager?
I keep reaching out to them. We're not having conversations with them yet. They're not really responding. We have found, apparently, there's a young lady, and whose name eludes me at the moment, but I've spoken with her and emailed her the directions or the drawings that Mr. Keys did. I followed up with her, not getting any response so far on that from North Miami. She was introduced to us by a resident on 121. She is one of the more junior staffers. I've also reached out to the manager over there. I've reached out to, let's see, I believe someone from the Parks and Parkways Committee who used to work over there. Gave me a phone number of someone. I've reached out to them. No response.
Okay. And those conversations, I think, really have to start manager to manager. Otherwise,
And I've
someone
reached out to Larry's
lower on the staff is thinking that you are maybe overstepping, trying to give them direction, and it really should happen among the managers first, ideally, and then filter down to the counterparts in Public Works or Parks or whoever on either side of that. They're not going to happen unless there's an understanding between the 2 heads, the 2 executive officers of the 2 cities.
May I ask a question, because I had a similar concern with the water, which this is a North Miami conversation, and I'll try and make it brief so we can get through the item. But I know that there was an issue even with the water, with Attorney Hearn trying to get the water contract through. I know I was on an event where I ran into North Miami's manager. We were chatting how we could support one another, and I mentioned the water contract. Out of curiosity, did the manager call you?
No.
Okay. So what I'm trying to say is we definitely can arrange a meeting, a formal meeting maybe. Maybe the attorney can work on that for the water contract. So there is some issues with communicating and getting things done. So with that in mind, and that's a big issue, that's not a small issue for us. Who owns the water pipes? Who's going to maintain them? These are enormous infrastructure issues that are critical to the village. And I'm not saying the median piece isn't very critical, especially if you're living on it. And I've driven down there. It is one of the more challenging medians we have. At this point, we have. I don't think a 121st can't be done. I just don't think before the budget season we're going to put that in front of us. We won't get it done. So I strongly recommend that while we can work on that tangentially, it doesn't have to be separate. The direction I think of the board should be a median other than 121st Street, based upon the current challenges. So with that in mind, do we have, because we've discussed this, unless somebody else has anything else to add, is there a motion to give direction to the board to work on one median of their choosing that would be a typical meeting that we can improve with some sort of cost, so we have some idea when we're going into next budget season?
Would it be too much to actually request some type of design and cost in connection with a median that's not 121st, but also 121st as well? Because if we can get that meeting with North Miami, and I'm trying to watch my language, but get them some fire underneath.
The communication.
Yeah, and where they're now communicating with us, and we can have this dialogue with them, and we can then move forward on 121st. I personally would like to see that one done. But what I don't want to do is not have anything, only have 121st, not have anything else, and then 121st, North Miami continue to ignore us. Can't get the dialogue going there, and then we don't have anything else. So I guess in a perfect world, I would like to see 121st be done, but understanding the relationship with North Miami and the communication with them, I would like to have that plan also for another meeting within the park.
Just to be clear, since they are our neighbors, I want to make a comment. I think North Miami, like us, has our own priorities, and sometimes their priorities may not be ours, and so forth. So I just want to give a shout out to North Miami, because we have to continue. I know we'll continually working with them to better that relationship and solve some of the mutual issues that we have. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, just one thing. I believe the median 121st Street, we're talking about 220 feet. We're not talking about the whole median. We're talking about, I believe, 3 houses. 1, 2, 3 houses. So it's 225 feet. It's not a block.
If I may allow the, how long, because since you guys made the design, how long is that, Dan? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Keys?
The area we were talking about?
Yes, it has its own life.
The area we're talking about is from Griffin to 6th. So,
Okay.
you know, how much of that gets done is subject to funding, and how much, whether individual residents want to participate or they want to participate sooner than later. You know, that's the other thing. You have an opportunity of willing, chomping at the bit residents.
Okay.
Okay. Who want to move.
Okay. So in fairness to the board who has been working on this, would there be an objection to ask for both of those items with not objecting to the 121st Street piece, but trying to get a design for a standard meeting so we have some sort of budgetary ideas, but not allowing, but encouraging them to proceed also on 121st? Would there be any objection to that?
You already have some of the budget issues. You have a request for dollars for planting trees, which is a higher priority, to tell you the truth, than starting to put in shrubbery. It should be, okay? Establishing the street tree cadence along a street is more important, because you already have that budget
But
item.
the issue here...
And I'm not so sure, you know, if that isn't enough project for one entire year. That's the other thing we come up against. I understand what you want. You don't think we want to get to that point? The things on our agenda that you find boring and repetitive are repetitive because they don't get done. That's just plain and simple.
I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you, sir. So, because we need to move on, it's getting very late, so just to agree, do we have a motion, or do we have a consensus to direct the board, I don't know if we need a motion for that, but consensus direct the board to, trying to word this correctly, attorney, you may help me if you'd like, to have a direction for a small, narrow median somewhere in the village, and continue along with the one on 121st Street, with the intent of getting it to us before budget. Is that well worded, or is it yours?
Yeah, that's, as I say, I want to see, and I'm not even sure if it's got to be before our budget, because doing one median, God knows how long it'll take. But some sort of basic idea of what we can do, and we should have enough in the budget to handle one median. We have some sort of an idea.
Of course.
And it should include trees, shrubs, everything.
Well, the only reason I'm suggesting for the median, if we're going to do it, we need to have a funding number. So
Well, let's
I
see.
want to make sure that we get that
Let's see
into
if
the
we can
fund,
put
so we can
something in.
actually get it done. The whole intent here is to get it done. So I don't want to
Well, the
do it
first
without
part
a
of it is
budget.
getting a plan. Let's get the
Okay.
plan done.
All right, do we have a consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
4-1. So do we need a motion then?
No, I don't think, do we?
No.
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 Okay, thank you, just want to clarify. All right, Commissioner Johnson, 12C, this is yours, item for discussion.
Thank you. My discussion item, I think, is pretty straightforward. It came out of a previous discussion with regard to the corner lots and the drive over of the corner lots, and a way to mitigate that. My suggestion was to raise this discussion item with regard to the use of stone street signs. I've heard the public comments. I appreciate them. They're very thankful. They're very helpful, and I thank you all for that. And it's kind of what I like to hear. I mean, you can bring up an item, and you might not be thinking of something one way, but it was a way that I thought that the community could maintain these. I know there's been a lot of discussion about people putting up their own items into their swale to prevent drive-overs, and there wouldn't be any, I don't want to use the word uniformity in the community, but no way for the village to kind of keep control of how those things look. So that was my thought process here for this item, and I welcome the rest of my commissioners to let me know what they think about it as far as helping mitigate drive-over.
Before our discussion, I would like to just task the attorney, because one of the issues that were brought up was liability. And I know you had, I'm not sure you anticipated this question, so we can continue our discussion if we give you a little bit of time. But one of the concerns was, the issue is primarily corner properties, not all, but primarily corner properties have continued with the larger trucks coming through, some of the drive-through, whether it's Waste Pro or whether it's school buses or whether it's just trucks dropping off stuff or just trucks coming through the village, or construction vehicles. We have a lot of that as well. There is a lot of destruction. I live on a corner property. I've lived it, and my solution, which is allowed, as long as the sight lines aren't violated, is to put something physically there that was vegetation so that they see it. So one of the concerns was, from a legal question, was the liability, since we own the swale. We're talking about in the future of allowing people to utilize that swale and have rights to the swale, but at the same time, the liability is ours. It's our swale. So I think that was the concern with Coral Gables. I love those. I absolutely love those things. They're beautiful, but cost-wise and so forth.
As I understand the street signs in Coral Gables, they are the city's. The city's gone out, created them, places them, maintains them, and essentially owns them. They're on city of Coral Gables right of way, or acquired whatever interest the city's had to, and they're the city's. It has been my experience universally is that whether the city places something in the right-of-way or authorizes a third party to do so, in this case, potentially the adjacent property owners, if and when an accident arises, God forbid, the local government is going to be named as a party to that lawsuit. It's the nature of the beast. It's one of the unfortunate byproducts of being government. People perceive the government as being a deep pocket. They do a title search or some other investigation, determine, oh, that's on village right-of-way, then automatically the city or the village gets named as, or whatever local government gets named as a party to that lawsuit. It's then obviously in the village's circumstances, it's turned over to our League of Cities carrier. They determine what law firm is going to be assigned that matter, and it then takes its natural course through litigation. To the extent that the village decides to move forward with this concept, particularly if allowing it by the third parties to do so, is certainly, I would suggest, an indemnification agreement. And unfortunately, you will hear, and I can't speak to Mr. Hearn, what his opinions are, but I will tell you now, and I will tell you in the future, the same thing I've always told other local governments that I've done work for. An indemnification agreement is only as good as the piece of paper it's on, because you have to enforce it, and then there become issues of is there insurance that covers the claim, et cetera. So to the extent that this village wants to look into this issue, I would suggest that you direct staff to contact the City of Coral Gables to find out what their experiences are, cost-wise, location-wise, where do they put it? Do they have a certain standards that it has to be set back X feet from the edge of pavement? Because obviously, the further you put it back, the less it has the desired effect of stopping people from cutting the...
Plus the height as well.
Yeah, correct. And certainly what their liability issues and experiences have been with respect to accidents and claims being placed against the city, and then potentially, I'm relatively certain that the City of Coral Gables also uses the League of Cities as their insurance carrier, and find out from whoever their rep is what those claims have resulted in, and has it affected, most importantly, the premiums, and the type of coverage that the City of Coral Gables has versus what you currently have in order to be able to cover that liability, that contingency.
The other question I have is regarding home rule. I think it's a home rule question. Once again, is if Miami-Dade County has one set of specifications and we choose to go outside those specifications, can we do that? And assuming we can, well, let me ask you a question. Can we do that? So if we have something that Miami-Dade County has the code of what they recommend, and then we do something else, that shouldn't be a problem, correct?
Yeah, as we all know, we live in Miami-Dade County, where the rules are different for Miami-Dade County compared to the rest of the state. So yes, one of the things that we would have to look at is whether or not the county has preempted this area to itself as far as regulations. What are the minimum standards? Coral Gables, and the same for Biscayne Park, predated the 1968 Florida Constitution. So some powers and what the limitations of those powers are have to be looked at as to when they arose, or they predate the 1968 Constitution. It's relatively complex, but the short answer is the county has preempted certain areas, and we would obviously, as part of that direction, or part of that research, if we were so directed, would be to in fact look at, has Miami-Dade County preempted the regulation of this particular area as far as what can be placed in, as far as street signage, et cetera. Do they preempt, or do they grandfather Coral Gables? Again, those are things that we can ask Coral Gables if that is the direction that we receive, and as part of that analysis, and then reporting back to this commission.
Thank you. Open it for further discussion. Commissioner Bill?
I think the signs look great. However, I would not like to see the signs we have now eliminated, because I just don't think those signs are as easy to see as our street signs now. So if we had both of them, I'd be fine with it. I just think the Gables is better. The Gables has got very good lighting. We don't. So the signs are much easier to see.
Thank you.
I mean, I know the issue is about protecting the swell area, especially in the corners. I mean, would we even consider just looking into something simple like the concrete curbing on the corners, as opposed to going the route of those signs? I mean, I'm just thinking about cost-wise.
I think this brought up for me an interesting discussion, which is kind of several tiered. One of them is certain corners don't have the turning radius, which creates the issue in the first place. The other is how many trucks and construction trucks and things that may or may not be turning appropriately. Like the other day I saw Waste Pro, and I wanted to thank them because they actually got out of the truck, backed up the truck, and made sure they didn't go over the swale. It was done very, very professionally. So I think the issue is kind of how do we best do that? I do know that some of the challenges we've had is people have planted vegetation so high that you can't see. So there are definitely triangular sightline issues that I know the manager has been addressing with code. Thank you very much, especially some dangerous corners. At the same time, vegetation is cheaper in the sense that it's not a huge cost, but then it's a maintenance issue. I do not oppose these signs. They'd be beautiful. I just don't know the cost. That would be my only concern, and the lighting issue as well. I like the idea of perhaps considering having the manager look at some of the best ways to do this, have staff look at it, knowing our village and our community, and see if you couldn't come up with some ideas for us that might take care of the issue and limit the liability. That would be my thoughts, and then including in that what Commissioner Johnson-Sardella has suggested as well. That would be my thoughts on it. Commissioner Johnson-Sardella?
You know, after hearing everyone's comments, cost, of course, is important to me, and if this is something that is cost prohibitive, I obviously would not support my own agenda item. As Vice Mayor Tudor has just said, I think I brought up in our last discussion something about there was actually curbing that wasn't as permanent. Also, the not curb, but street painting, the reflective paint, which I think has been brought up a couple of times this evening, that needs to be refreshed in our community, that can help at least site-wise, where you can see the corners, especially at night, is helpful to not, obviously trucks might still run over it, and I don't think there really is an easy solution to this, as one of our residents, I believe Gary Cool, said this evening, that I don't believe we're going to have an easy fix for this, but again, I saw this as one option, but cost is a big concern. If we're out budgeted with this option, then we need to move forward.
We might also maybe able to do it piecemeal, where we can try, because it isn't, and I want to be clear, it's not every single corner of every single, it's not every single corner property. Some of the streets are wide enough where the turning ratio doesn't have an issue. And then we have some areas that there's just no way the truck can even turn around to get the garbage unless we change the radius. So when we go do the road, we may have to take back some of that swale in order to make that radius turning. So that's my thoughts on it. It's allow staff to look into this and more collectively and figure out some solutions for the residents.
Thank you, through the chair. I think staff really is overburdened already, and I really, I wouldn't want to put another piece of research on your plate, because I know you have plenty to do. Commissioner Johnson Sardella, thank you for bringing the discussion, because it's something that we've, comes up every once in a while, and we haven't really focused on it as intensely as this. Some of the suggestions that were offered by public comment, the paint, that gives a more narrow feel to the road, and defining those corners. I think that those things will go a long way towards making drivers more careful about staying on the pavement as long as they can. The picture that's given here on your agenda item, that probably is one of the most well-preserved corners in Coral Gables, because I know, having driving through there, many of them are deteriorated. They may even be historic markers that, are protected, but they require a lot of maintenance. And I just don't see how we could, number one, install them, and number two, keep up with keeping them looking nice. And, set aside whatever liability might be created. I think that we would serve the community much better by investing our dollars in the striping and defining the corners with the reflectors and lights.
Thank you. I think I actually concur with that as the first step, absolutely. Manager Manners, I know you've worked with the county. Can you tell us where we are with that?
Well, absolutely. The county has agreed to come in and repaint the stop bars for free at all the stop signs. I think we have 90, I want to say 92, but it could be more. But we haven't, I don't know if we have requested that they paint the curves and all of that. I know that Public Works has that ability. I believe they repainted around Village Hall a few times, and they can certainly do that. We are down one person in Public Works at the moment. He had surgery last week, and he's on very light duty right now. And so, but that's something that we can certainly look forward to and budget for next year.
Do we have a consensus on the commission to move forward with some of the basic striping and see where we are with that? And that was also the recommendation from the Public Safety Advisory Board. Do we have consensus to go ahead and manager move forward on all that?
Yes.
Yes?
I find it hard to believe that we have to give consensus for that. I think that that's a maintenance issue that should be just taken care of administratively.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Request for next 13 is request for placements of item on the next meeting's agenda. Are there any at this time? I do believe this is the time where we have to put together the manager's review, so we can discuss putting that, but I'm going to allow the manager to discuss that in his reports. So first, is there any village attorney reports?
Just glad to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Village manager?
Okay. One of the things I'd like to do right off the bat is we have a new reserve officer, Officer Bryant, and I would like to give the chief an opportunity to come up here and introduce him, if you could. And so they came in a little later tonight after the meeting had begun, so I wanted to make sure we get a chance to introduce him.
Doesn't he play center for Miami Heat?
Just saying, he is, just for the record, he is taller than Commander Walschlager. He is taller than, watch your head, sir.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to introduce Officer Bryant. He is a new reserve officer with the village, and he's going to be assigned as the village park officer. So his primary duties is going to be to focus on all the activities around the park and also work with the park manager on different programs with the youth, with residents in the community, and with other activities that he sees needed within the park to ensure that we can advance the mission and objectives we have for the park. So having said that, I'm going to put you on the spot and call you up to the mic.
Officer Bryant, John Bryant, thank you for having me and thank you for giving me the chance. I won't let you down. I'm already into fitness already. I do boot camps and stuff for kids already, so I don't see that being a problem. But, I enjoy doing that also.
He's also got a very cute young son. Just saying.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much, sir, and welcome.
Thank you.
have to stand up or it's going to look ridiculous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're just jealous, just saying. Good evening.
I think most of my manager's report's been covered already this evening. We've gone through finance. Again, a conference call this week with GMS and Alberni Caballero. We'll be moving forward on the 2017 audit with expected completion prior to 9/30/2018. We're currently receiving input from department heads for budget preparation in the first workshop. The police department is, you just met one of our new reserve officers. We're looking forward to having him at the park. We've added in a second reserve officer as well, Officer Williams, and he'll be joining our team shortly. I believe he's already begun, hasn't he, Chief? And so.
Officer Williams is came over from
Sorry, Chief, I know your voice carries, but we're going to make you go to the podium here.
I had the pleasure and honor of swearing Officer Williams last week, along with Officer Bryant. Officer Williams formerly used to work with Opelika PD, and he came over and joined our family here at the village. He's already this week done about close to 20 hours of volunteer time, and he's extremely dedicated and qualified, so I feel honored to have him on board as part of the team also. Among several goals and objectives that I have, one of them is to expand our reserve program so we can have additional programs and additional services that we can provide to the residents here at the village.
Thank you so much, Chief. Anything else, Village Manager?
I think we've really covered everything else pretty much tonight. We can talk about my review if you'd like, how how the commission would like to do that.
Okay, I'll open that for discussion. Do you have a preference in how you'd like it done?
I think meeting individually with each commissioner and getting feedback, and then, however you want to present it publicly is fine.
Okay. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So not in writing?
It can be in writing if you'd like, that's fine.
Did you want an open, do you just want a discussion as it was done with this, because we had a...
Would you like me to put together, I'm sure there's evaluation forms out there for managers, specifically through probably the League of Cities or something like that. I can get those and present those. No, nothing that formal?
I don't think that's, I just think you should present what you've done and your accomplishments. I'd like to see you talk about everything you've done. I think one of the challenges for the residents is a lot of what you do is invisible. I'd like to make it more visible. I'd like them to hear what you have accomplished, and then we can discuss
Happy to do that.
I think it's a good idea to have a report of things that have been accomplished with your leadership, but I thought we were talking about the commission reviewing the manager, not necessarily the community reviewing the manager.
I understand, but that's the time in which usually the manager, to give him the opportunity to talk to the community. I don't think that's a bad thing, do you?
I'm just trying to understand what we want to accomplish, that's all.
I don't think that's an unusual thing. I think we're going to meet individually, and then he's asked for just a general review publicly. And then seems to me that would be appropriate. He's not asking for a formal review?
I thought, Christian, you said we would meet with you one-on-one.
Right.
And then you would come back and report. Is that, okay?
That was my understanding. Was
So
we could,
we're not going to publicly review, we're going to meet with him, and then he'll come back and give a report.
That's fine.
Oh, okay?
Yep, okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Are we done with the manager's report? Because I have a couple of follow-ups. Sure, go ahead. Yeah? Okay. So at your report last Friday, you say you spoke with FDOT and regarding their proposal to put in traffic calming on 6th Avenue, and that they have a tentative idea of putting in sidewalks and crosswalks, as well as examining drainage. But at our last commission meeting, Commissioner Bilt and you said that they have approved sidewalks for 6th Avenue. So I'm trying to understand where we are in the process.
Sure.
Commissioner Ross, if I may address this, since it was brought up, and it was a thing that I
I'm
actually
sorry, I was
brought up.
asking the manager.
Well, that's why I'm asking you if I may speak about it.
I recognize Commissioner Bilt, please.
Chair?
Please,
Okay.
Commissioner Bilt.
We've gone back and forth with FDOT for a year and a half. At our last meeting, they said we might consider sidewalks. We never heard from them. Took 6 weeks, 12 weeks. I wrote, he wrote. Eventually, on the 16th of July, they said they have approved the design phase, which would take anywhere from 18 months to 2 years. We didn't go to them asking for sidewalks. We asked for something for calming for 6th Avenue. They said we could start off with sidewalks. Said, go right ahead, whatever you could possibly think of. As I say, on the 17th of July, they wrote back saying that part of it has been approved. In theory, in concept, they will do sidewalks, possibly crosswalks. I reported back at the last meeting, they approved that portion of it. I have not approved anything. As you know, I am a single commissioner. I can't approve anything without everybody else's approval. We need at least 3 people. During that, they also said during that 18-month period, they would seek input from us. They would seek input for residents. Right now, it's sort of open-ended what they actually are willing to do. We don't know. We can't ask residents saying, oh, how would you feel about, because we don't know what the about is. We don't even know if they plan on using concrete, if they'd be using pavers or something else. And that's the way it was left. They said it will not start until, I believe, towards the end of 2019. At that time, they will start the design phase, and it'll take 18 months, 2 years, another 6 months. My thought was, let's see what they're willing to offer us and go from there. But again, nothing's been approved. The only one who's approved anything is they've approved the expenditure of funds. They haven't asked us for any matching funds or anything else. 6th Avenue has always been a problem. This is the first step. They have said nobody from the village has ever approached them before about anything on 6th Avenue.
That's not correct.
Well, all I can go by is what they said. I can't go by what anybody else. This is what they have said.
Okay,
So-
and I suppose I can only go on by what managers have told us, reported at commission meetings
Okay.
previously.
And again,
And
this is.
and the question was, when I asked the question and I asked for clarification, I was told I think, Christian, what you said was, all I can tell you is what they said in an email to me, that they've approved sidewalks for 6th Avenue.
They have approved, I mean, my understanding is that they have approved to pay for those sidewalks. They're going to start drawing up designs and that sort of thing. But, I mean, that's the FDOT approval. You know, I mean, the commission has to approve it at some point, or, you know, they're going to reach out to our residents, like Commissioner Bilt said, so.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think FDOT probably makes its plans, and, you know, you have to accept what they're going to put in place, because it's their right-of-way. It's a state
No,
road.
I understand that. But-
So they haven't actually approved sidewalks, or they have?
No, what they said they would come back with was designs for sidewalks and potentially for drainage, and that this would be the first step. Hopefully, we'd be able to get some crosswalks as well. And so, if you'd like, I can forward the email to all the commissioners.
Would you do that just to keep us in the loop? I think that would be
Then
helpful.
everyone would be on the same page.
That would be the easiest thing to do.
Also, at the last commission meeting, we talked about the FEMA Hurricane Hazard Mitigation Grant and the ability to use that for generator for Village Hall, a gas or propane generator. The deadline to submit the grant was August 6th.
Yes. And I had Officer Valiente working on that, as I've reported to you all along, that he's been working on that. In speaking with him, He actually had found another grant that he was working on, so we were all talking fruit. You and I were talking apples, he was talking oranges. So there's another grant, a pre-disaster mitigation grant that provides for generators, as well as a number of other items. He gave me this listing today, available funding up to $4 million, 25% required match. So it's an opportunity. That's the one that he's been working on. And my understanding is that's moving along well. Additionally, there's a flood mitigation assistance grant that he's working on, and part of this as well. It's a FEMA administered through the Florida Department of Energy Management. And that would be another one that coincides with this. So my apologies that all this time I've been telling him, and I forwarded him the grant information you gave me, and he's gone working on something that's different but still accomplishes the same thing. He seems pretty confident that we will qualify for this.
So we didn't submit a grant?
No,
By August 6th?
the August 6th one was not submitted.
This pre-disaster mitigation grant, is that through FEMA?
It's FEMA administered through the Florida Department of Emergency Management.
Can you, because we were specifically talking about one thing and now we're pursuing something else, can you send us that information so we're all on the
Absolutely.
same page?
Yes, I just found out yesterday that we were actually pursuing something else. And so,
All right, thank you. Anything
One
else,
more
Commissioner?
thing?
Yep, then we'll see if we can wrap it up. Thank you.
So thank you for arranging for sunshine law instruction for all of the boards. And that's supposed to take place tomorrow, Wednesday at 6:30, I believe, or 6 o'clock? 6:30. 6:30. I'd like to attend, but on our website, it doesn't say where it's to take place.
it will take place here in Village Hall in the log cabin. And I'll ask Madam Clerk, please make sure that's on the website. Please make sure that everyone who's on a board, all the commissioners, so forth, get an email first thing in the morning about this. Okay.
Thank you.
It is open for the public, right?
It is, it's entirely open for the public, yes.
Thank you. All right. Since we've gone through the boards pretty much, commissioner comments pretty much, announcements. Madam Clerk.
We have tomorrow, August 8, 2018, 6:30 p.m., the Sunshine Law educational session with Mr. Robert Thompson from the Miami-Dade Ethics and Public Trust Commission.
If you get a little louder, if you don't mind, please, because they're having trouble hearing you.
I'm sorry.
It's, the air conditioning is just loud.
And we have on Monday, August 13, 2018, 7 p.m., a Code Compliance Board. On Monday, August 13, 2018, 7 p.m., also Biscayne Park Foundation. On Thursday, August 16, 2018, 7 p.m., Parks and Parkway Advisory Board. On Monday, August 20, 2018, 6:30 p.m., Planning and Zoning Advisory Board. On Wednesday, August 22nd, now it's back to 22nd, 2018, 7 p.m., the Public Safety Advisory Board. On Monday, September 3rd, 2018, all village departments will be closed for Labor Day. And on Tuesday, September 4th, 2018, 6:30 p.m., Planning and Zoning Advisory Board. Monday, September 10th, 2018, 7 p.m., Biscayne Park Foundation. Our first budget workshop is scheduled for Tuesday, August 21st, 2018, at 6:30 p.m. Second budget workshop is scheduled for Wednesday, August 29, 2018, at 6:30 p.m. And our next regular commission meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 11, 2018, at 7 p.m.
And one more announcement, I just want to give a shout out for the police. Do you want to just quickly give a 1-minute announcement on the wonderful event you all that Easton you will have planned for Saturday?
On Saturday, we'll be hosting an event at the park for the back to school. We will be providing helmets and safety gears to the kids within local communities. Our village resource officer will be spearheading that campaign along with Isa from the Parks Department. So we invite all the residents to please attend. We're gonna have Batman there, fire trucks, canine dogs. I even managed to get a horse. Don't ask me from where, but I got one. So we're gonna have a horse we're gonna bring over a horse. So the city of Miami volunteered one of their horses, and you know, the park is important, and what we do with the park and the different activities, I think it's the heart of the village. So we're gonna make sure that this is an exciting event, not only for the youth, but also for the residents. So I please ask that everybody try to attend.
And what time, the time?
11:30, right?
11 to 2.
11, I'm sorry. So, I welcome you.
Thank you, and please encourage everybody to come. We'd love to have a great turnout for that event.
Before we
We
close
did have,
this-
I haven't forgotten you. There was one other item that was asked by,
Just a separate thing.
Le-
For the Children's Safety Day, because it's not on the website, Creepy Critters Pest Control, my company, is going to be having a really big red fire truck that used to be here in Biscayne Park. So that's also going to be at the event.
okay, thank you. I also, we did, we did neglect, Dan Samarin has asked us for permission to go ahead and do the 9/11 two pieces. Can we go ahead and just have a quick motion on that before we finish? Is there a motion, Commissioner Ross?
I think that in the past, we've had some kind of an agreement to protect liability. Okay, we'll have to dig up whatever that was last year that we,
Okay, with that liability, do we have a motion to go ahead and approve the 9/11 events too, that he mentioned during the
Yes.
comments? Yes? Is there a motion? Yes, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, second?
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for staying so long. We so appreciate it.
Oh, standing.